We have quite a few more people that will be joining us. So busy night tonight. We just got a filing from the Sussman team, and we're going to talk about that. And we also expect more filings tonight. So in the filing from Michael Sussman tonight, we noticed that uh, it takes note of a Fusion GPS filing forthcoming. So that's on page 2. So that's coming tonight. I don't know. Maybe we'll get that during chat. That'll be interesting to try to break that down for you guys live. But we'll go as late as we can, and I know a lot of the lawyers are going to be joining us, and it's always nice to hear their take, and that's going to be really important tonight because this was actually a pretty technical filing, and I'm not a lawyer, so I can give you my take as kind of like a layman, somebody who's just been following Russiagate for a couple years now, and I try to call it fair. I try to call it objectively. And objectively, this was a good filing. This was pretty well written overall by the Sussman team. There are some weaknesses, and I think there's there's some things, there's some sections that people are going to be scratching their heads over just reading it, because it's like, here's page 3, and this is just an example. So they say reasons that they're opposing the motion to compel from John Durham. Motion number 1, argument number 1, they say, first, this motion should have been filed at the time the particular privilege claims were made, and well before Mr. Sussman was indicted, not over 6 months later, and certainly not weeks before trial. So they say, okay, well, that seems like a good argument. And then the very next sentence, they say, here, the motion seeks to compel compliance with subpoenas that were issued in some cases over a year ago. Well, that's considerably before Michael Sussman was indicted. So, you know what I mean? Like, it goes, like, it makes this argument, and then the very next sentence, like, is completely opposite what they just argued. So in sentence number 2, they say, well, these subpoenas have been out there for, over a year. So I don't know. I think there's some really interesting arguments here. I think there's some tough arguments, and been DMing a lot of people since this finally came out. And the lawyers, I'm not going to speak for them, but generally speaking, I think they have some concerns with what John Durham's going to face. And they'll be joining us here shortly, and I'm sure they're going to be able to kind of hash this out, because there's several other examples where you say, okay, well, Sussman seems to be cherry picking some arguments, but on the whole, overall, there are some problems for John Durham here. And when it's talking about subpoenas that are issued on the day of the indictment, or subpoenas that are issued subsequent to the indictment, I think it said in one section, well, that's a problem. As a layman, you can't pursue new evidence after the indictment. You only get one shot at discovery, and you have to put all the cards on the table. So that's going to be interesting. I don't know what John Durham's going to do. This is, these are documents that are not really relevant to the charged offense. So the charged offense is just a false statement, and the false statement is, he went to the FBI with information that was given to him by Rodney Joffe. He said he was not representing anybody, and in fact, he was, and he was actually billing that time to the Clinton campaign. So that's a lie, and that's what he's charged for. Now he's made all kinds of arguments around that. There's one thread I put out last night where it was really interesting, because I think it was last week's filings. The Sussman lawyers were saying, well, it wasn't material. If it was material, then the FBI should have been asking more questions about it, right? If it was going to impact an investigation, they would have been asking more questions, and they didn't do that. So they must not have taken it seriously enough to have it impact their investigation. But I was reading the HIPSI transcript last night, and Sussman actually addressed that point very specifically. And Sussman said, yeah, Jim Baker didn't reach out, didn't follow up, but just to be clear, I asked him not to. So I thought that was, it's just amazing. And these lawyers really seem to be grasping for straws a little bit. I mean, they made a good argument here tonight, but they're jumping around. They're really it seems very desperate. They don't want these documents to be released. Um, they're trying to go to trial as soon as possible. So that's a constitutional right. They can go to trial. Everybody has a right to a speedy trial, and Michael Sussman's trying to exercise that, and he's trying to get the trial as soon as possible. But you can also feel it in these filings where he wants to get into trial because he does not want to see what else is coming down the pike. And it seems pretty clear, whatever's in these documents, whatever they've been fighting privilege claims for, and claiming privilege for years now, it's going to be bad for him. It's going to be really damning for Clinton. It's going to be damning for all the operatives involved. And we'll just have to see. I mean, it'll be interesting to hear from the lawyers. I see Cody's on. Cody, if you have any reaction, love to hear from you. Mansour, I'll add you to speak as well. If you guys have any reaction, I mean, go for it. I know King and everybody will be on shortly too.
I may have a limited reaction at this point. I just e-filed my taxes, so rest in peace my savings account, but there it goes. So I'll get caught up on this filing.
Okay, well, that's good too. That's good. Positive developments. Hey, Walkfire. Glad you to speak. Don't know if you have any reaction, Walkfire. I know you said you were going to try to read the filings, but Mansour, if you have anything as well, either one of you, interested in hearing from everybody tonight, because I'm a layman and I don't really have the experience to know about the technical arguments that are being made. So, what's going on, Walkfire?
Hey, what's up, Mr. Undead? Yeah, hey, happy to be here. Sorry I missed Friday nights. I've been trying to catch up on the recording that Gene helpfully provides every time. I still have a little bit left to go, so I'm still catching up a little bit on the filing from Friday. I've just skimmed tonight's really quickly. I'm still trying to put together my thoughts in my head right now. So I'm going to let someone else speak real quick while I continue doing that. At the same time, I'm eating some dinner. So,
all right, that sounds good. It's always nice to see you, Walkfire. Mansour, I don't know if you have anything to share. Otherwise, I'll start riffing for a few minutes here while the chat builds up. All right, that's all right. So I'll try to go through the filing here, and I have a few sections that I highlighted. And for those that haven't read the filing, it might be helpful to kind of give an overview of what we're talking about tonight. So Michael Sussman filed a motion in opposition of John Durham's motion to compel. And John Durham, what he's doing, he's going after redacted documents, and in some cases, I think just documents themselves that have been withheld, primarily from Fusion GPS. There are some communications with Rodney Joffe that Sussman's not CC'd on, that the Clinton campaign is asserting privilege over, which is really unusual. And that's kind of the crux of, I think, what's going to make these discussions tonight, and I think the filings and the motions in court so interesting, as these privilege claims seem so weak. I mean, it's so desperate. Now, the privilege they're asserting is that it's like protected work product in preparation for anticipated litigation, which is clearly not the case. This is political opposition research, which is not subject to any type of protection whatsoever. And the fact that they're claiming that is so weak and so transparently desperate to withhold documents for really no legitimate reason. It's like, can the judge just do an in-camera review and assess that privilege claims is legitimate or not? And it seems very, I'm hopeful that the judge, will do that, because what an in-camera review is, it's sort of like I think of it as like a middle ground. And again, I'm just a layman, where, the defendant in this case is asserting privilege over documents. Now, they don't want to turn over the documents to John Durham and then try to wrestle out privilege. So in lieu of that, they give the documents to the judge, and then the judge reviews these documents, and it's just a subset right now. I think it's 38 documents that the judge is potentially going to review. and then they're going to say, yes, these documents are relevant, or the documents are subject to privilege claims that are valid or not. And if they're not valid, then those documents will have to go over to John Durham. And apparently, nobody's seen these documents unredacted. So all these years later, it's been 6 years. There's a chance to finally know what's under these redactions that they've been fighting so hard to keep out of the courts. We'll have to see. Michael, I'll add you. I don't know if you have reaction or anything to say, but go ahead. Hey, Michael, how's it going? All right. Mansoor, did you have something? Otherwise, I'll keep just kind of riffing for a minute.
Keep riffing for a minute.
All right, I can do that. All right, so the filing tonight, basically, they set out a few arguments on why they are opposing the motion to compel. And what Sussman lawyers filed is basically, first, they're saying that the special counsel's motion is untimely. Don't know the merits of that. I'm just going to lay it out for now, and I'll let the lawyers kind of jump in and speak on that as they join the chat. So the first contention is that the motion is untimely because John Durham's known about this for months, and in some cases for at least a year, that these parties were going to claim this privilege, and basically they're saying, John Durham didn't do anything. And again, we'll let the lawyers speak to that. The second contention that they're making is that this should have been brought before the chief judge of the district court. So this, I think, what I've learned from DMs tonight is probably their strongest argument. When you think about the grand jury, that's before a different judge than what they're in court with right now. So in the grand jury proceedings, if there's a privilege issue, if there's anything like that, that's where ordinarily this would be resolved. And the fact that John Durham has not brought this before that judge within the grand jury proceedings or flush this out over there is pretty unusual, is what I'm understanding. And, for that reason, they kind of, build on that with their third contention. And they're saying, the special counsel has seemingly abused the grand jury in order to obtain their documents redacted for privilege that he now challenges. So John Durham, one of the things that he did apparently is September 16th, when he indicted Michael Sussman, he also went to the grand jury and got subpoenas for documents. And there is a timing issue, is my understanding, where, as I kind of alluded to earlier, once you indict somebody, you really can't collect any additional evidence. Whatever's in the record is what you're going to try the case on. And King, in a DM tonight, he was talking about, the grand jury is supposed to have, the most complete file possible in their consideration for an indictment. So the fact that there's going to be more evidence added to the case is a little bit unfair, and that's a little bit like outside the intention and design of the grand jury. And on that, I think Durham is pretty weak, is my understanding. And, he's going to have to, it's going to be really interesting to see what Durham files. Durham's going to have to, find some case law. He's going to have to figure out, how to layer this in so that the judge is going to respond to this favorably, because I think there is a risk that this motion gets denied based on everything that I'm reading tonight. And let's see, I think there's one other contention. So fourth, special counsel seeks documents that are irrelevant on their face. So I don't know about that. They're basically trying to narrow the case down. They're saying, this is a simple false statement case, right? Our client allegedly went to the FBI and lied and said he wasn't representing the client. Like, that's all that's been charged. And now John Durham's trying to bring in all this other evidence about emails from Fusion GPS, and judge is really just not relevant to this case. I don't know about that. I don't know. It'd be interesting to hear what the lawyers will say about that. John Durham basically laid out filing a couple weeks ago in the motion to compel, where he actually, for the first time, wrote about a joint venture, and he wrote about a conspiracy, a non-criminal conspiracy, but multiple parties working together towards a common goal. And under that understanding, these other parties and what communications they have become relevant, because now if there's a joint venture and there's all these parties working towards a common goal, then those communications are relevant, because now it's Michael Sussman going to the FBI for the purpose of advancing a common goal under that joint venture. So those are the 4 contentions that are in there right now. As I said earlier, I mean, this filing notes that Fusion GPS is going to have a filing. I assume that's going to be tonight. For whatever reason, these filings have been pretty late at night. I think on Friday night, I think it was like 12:30 in the morning that the filing came out. So hopefully it comes out during chat. We'll just kind of break it down. But if anybody else wants to step in, Mansour, I see you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, okay. So this is a little bit off topic of today's filing, but since you brought up the exception to bring in documents under the common scheme language, I've got something, a question or a comment about that. There's been some talk for a couple weeks now, speculation that Christopher Steele might either be testifying as a in relation to either reports or statements of his that Durham wants to bring in under, I think, like USC 183500. Like on Leslie's feed today, she was talking about that a bunch with Fool and some other people. And there doesn't seem to be any, and if you guys recall, we talked about this, I think, a week or two ago. I asked King the same question, what he thought about it, and it doesn't seem like anybody knows. So I've been really sweating that a lot. And so I started thinking about things, and I took a look over onto the Danchenko indictment. Because what I found there that's kind of interesting is if you read through the Danchenko indictment, Steele is listed a couple times. Sorry, I had to put my phone down because I'm driving by some police. Steele's listed a couple times in the Danchenko indictment, and principally he's there because the whole Danchenko indictment is about him lying to FBI. And so Durham has brought in a couple statements made by Steele in his September interviews with FBI to either contradict what Igor has told FBI, or in some cases also to show that the two are in alignment. And a question that I had, and I asked Leslie this, I haven't got a response yet, but my question is like similar to what's going on in the Sussman case. Basically, like, why the hell is whatever Steele says that Danchenko told him, how on earth is that relevant to Danchenko ultimately lying to the FBI, right? Like, what is Steele thinking, or what does Danchenko told Steele have anything to do, whether it aligns or not, with what he told the FBI. And my only thought is that, similar to the Sussman case, they might be bringing in Steele's statements in the Danchenko case to show that the two of them were also operating under common scheme. So again, this just branches out off of that whole question, which I really, really, really wish we could get an answer to. Is it possible that Steele's going to be testifying? I hope not. I don't think so. But if not, how are they going to bring in these Steele statements? And why are Steele's statements even relevant, especially to the Danchenko case, but also here to the Sussman case? And I think the only answer is common scheme. So that's just my off the wall, tangentially related comment. Thanks.
Yeah, so I've seen a lot about the Steele thing today, obviously, and I I think people are reading a little bit too much into it. I don't think there's any indication that Steele is actually going to testify. Um, I think you have a good question in there where, how is he going to bring in certain documents or testimony from Steele? Um, I don't know the answer to that. I'll let a lawyer kind of speak to that. I know that Steele does have a couple depositions out there where, he gave one to the British court that is related to the Alpha Bank allegations themselves, and then obviously there's an interview out there with the FBI, I think too. So I think those are good questions. I mean, I don't see any reason that Steele would testify. I think he's got some liability himself, or at least I would hope he does, just under like a common scheme argument, just kind of like what you laid out. I don't see how you could let Steele go and then indict Igor Danchenko when they were working towards the same goal.
Me neither. But like as Leslie notes, you even if it's sworn testimony, you can't just bring that in without like a live witness, there to be examined, and even further and more importantly, the defendant, whether Danchenko or Sussman, they have a right, to confront their witnesses. You can't just bring in their testimony elsewhere from some other time. They have certain rights. So, her point is he's either going to come in under like a non-immunity deal, which would be like crazy, right? Like, why would he subject himself to that? So the whole thing is just really puzzling, and I just wish we could get it nailed down better.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go back and revisit that thread. I don't think I read it. I don't think I read it all today. So whenever it came out, I think I glanced at it and didn't really read it. So Walk of Fire, I don't know if you want to jump in on that point, but I don't have too much more to add on that. Alrighty. Well, it's good questions. I mean, I just don't have the answers for you on that. To the point that Steele might testify, I don't think he will. But how do you get the evidence into the court? I don't know. So that's a good question. Let's see here. Hey, Michael, how's it going?
Hey, how are you? Quick comment on the common purpose conspiracy tactic I've seen a long time ago is a prosecutor using the hint or the allegation of that you're a subject, you're a target, whatever the case may be, to effectively freeze out any witnesses or documents he doesn't know about or that he doesn't want on the stand. And as you just stated, who in their right, or as Monsieur did, who in their right mind would come in and testify without immunity? Well, the way you ensure that as a prosecutor is to allege common conspiracy, and you've just taken them all off the stand. But they'll take the fifth. So there may be a 180-degree difference here that maybe Durham wants some of those, possible defense witnesses just not showing up. And I think Sussman's attorneys alluded to that in the filing.
But can he bring the documents in at that point, or is it just literally a scare tactic?
I don't know about the documents, to tell you the truth. I was speaking more of the witnesses on the stand. As to the documents, I don't know.
That's interesting. I like that theory. I'll have to put a little more thought into that one. Hey, Fear, how's it going? I saw you wanted to speak. JH, you there? You guys are faking me out, requesting to be speakers. Alrighty. I'll jump back into the filing. If anybody wants to speak, go ahead and put your hand up or anything like that. I'm happy to take questions while we wait for some more of the lawyers kind of join us here. Alrighty. Well, got the filing back open. So one of the questions I get asked a lot in DMs is like, where do you find all this stuff? So this is just following the docket. If you Google United States versus Sussman, you should be able to get a link to Court Listener, and they'll be updated throughout the day with any docket entries, anything like that. You can set up alerts as well so that you get alerted as soon as the documents hit the docket, and that's always helpful. So, Daniel, I'm going to add you as the speaker. What's up, Daniel? How's it going?
Hey, Undead. So I just had a comment from something that I thought the motion revealed is that Durham has been kind of going soft and not enforcing his subpoenas. He's had them out there for a year and a half now, and he isn't getting the documents. Like, I kind of agree in part with some of the things in his motion about things like, why didn't he do this in the grand jury, like, earlier? And, like, but one justification, though, I can give is possibility. I need a lawyer to speak on this because I'm not a lawyer. That we know that Durham said there was a continuing, ongoing criminal investigation into Sussman's conduct and other things going on with his probe. So could that be like he's using the grand jury still to continue his investigation? Like, is that a potential? I'd have to ask that to a lawyer. Like, is that a potential explanation? Or I'm not sure, but yeah, because his investigation is still ongoing, obviously.
Yeah, that's a good point, and that's kind of what makes this a little bit weird, because if Durham wants to pursue a criminal conspiracy charge, he could actually go to a grand jury right now and request documents. He could challenge the privilege claims under that precedent,
and they
flush all this up.
That's another thing. They apparently they said, like, to the DNC they were going to file a motion in January, but they never filed it.
Yeah, it is weird. I don't disagree at all. Durham's been really, I don't even know how to describe it. I don't know what he's doing. I don't want to theorize too much, but yeah, I mean, in this filing, they're noting subpoenas that were issued over a year ago, and Durham's basically never challenged their privilege assertions. And then there's more subpoenas in September, and they again assert privilege or give them redacted documents, and then they're alleging that, absent a few emails back and forth where they ask for more clarification on the privilege claims themselves, that Durham hasn't really he obviously hasn't made any motions in court to confront the privilege claims. So it's very unusual to me as a layman, kind of trying to figure out what he's doing. And I don't think, criticism is unwarranted of John Durham. If he has not raised these privilege issues in a courtroom, that's on him. And there is something unusual here where Durham waited to the very last day under the statute of limitations guidelines to indict Michael Sussman. So whatever he came across, whatever the issue was in the case, I mean, he seems to have gotten the evidence very late. He waited to the very last day to actually indict Michael Sussman. So I would assume he was still trying to gather evidence. And then, as you noted, in filings a few weeks ago, Durham noted like 3 times that Sussman remained under an active criminal investigation. So I don't know. I don't know if this is like a throwaway motion from John Durham where he's thinking it would be nice to get these documents from this judge here and now, or maybe he can go to another grand jury under a criminal conspiracy theory of a case and get more subpoenas and challenge their privilege claims. But it doesn't make me feel good that Durham like hasn't
Knowing he doesn't have these documents yet.
Yeah, exactly. I don't have, I'm not going to defend John Durham. I don't know what the deal is. So yeah.
It'd be interesting to hear from one of the criminal practitioners whether or not a superseding indictment is even possible at this point with Sussman. Particularly, the existing indictment goes to, basically lying when he's in the office. I think Baker, whomever it was. But now that email has surfaced, or the text message, where he texted the day before saying, "Hey, I'd like to come in. I'm not representing anyone." That's a different day. And I don't know if the existing indictment technically covers that. It'd be interesting if that or everything else we're talking about could be subject to superseding indictment. Again, I don't have the answer to that. I don't practice in the area, but I've thought about it.
Yeah, and I'm not a lawyer, but I have asked that question of a few lawyers in the DMs that I have, and for that text message that just became evidence within the last few weeks when Baker went through his cloud and found text messages from Sussman saying that he wasn't representing anybody. That's outside the statute of limitations now, and I think the consensus from the people that I've DM'd with is, Durham really can't touch that. He might be able to use it in a conspiracy superseding indictment, but as far as like actually using that as a false statement count, I don't think Durham can do that. So. Fear, I saw you wanted to speak again. I don't know if you have anything. Go ahead.
Sorry, I had some hardware issues here, but I guess I had a couple questions, and we got at least one attorney here. But when documents are subpoenaed, like all the subpoenas that Durham has issued, but they're subpoenaed with privilege and redactions. Are the contents of the redactions considered produced at the time of document production? They're just redacted, or are they not considered produced until the redactions or their privilege claim is broken? If you know what I mean. So I guess timing wise, so, if those documents were produced 6 months ago, but they're produced redacted, and Durham successfully removes the privilege, do those redactions suddenly get revealed and the contents are already there? You know what I mean? Like it's a technical timing issue, I guess.
So you're basically presenting it as, are those grand jury subpoenas that originally were for the documents, do those kind of cover that from a timing standpoint? Is that kind of what you're getting at?
So, were the contents of the redactions also subpoenaed at that same time? So if these if this privilege claim is not valid, then is all the contents of those redactions considered have been produced way back when the documents were originally produced?
That's a good question. I'm not a lawyer. I think the answer is yes, but I will let a lawyer kind of speak to that. I know there are a couple people that are on their way, so we'll table that question.
Yeah, it kind of also is there is all this weirdness with we get the impression that maybe there hasn't been a lot of aggressiveness on the part of the special counsel's team, and I sort of get the impression, that they're sort of plodding along, looking at this case and saying, yeah, there's a few things here we could charge or whatever. And then something, like maybe in January, they had some sort of huge discovery that suddenly blew everything open, and they kind of got caught with their pants down, and they realized they've got a real case on their hands here now. And it's all bumping up against the statute of limitations and whatnot. But it's almost like something changed in the investigation. And I don't know if anybody has comments on that, but.
I'm not sure I could pinpoint a time where it really changed. I think it's really interesting that Durham waited till the last day to indict Sussman in the first place. But I think to that end, I can see in FOIA documents that Durham was just getting into DARPA around that same time. So Durham had a preliminary conversation with Kara Midas in February 2021. But he didn't really follow up with them as best as I can tell until August and September, and that's where I think Durham started getting into the DARPA and probably issuing subpoenas around there too. I would guess. Um, so there could be more evidence emerging out of there, but I don't know if I could pinpoint a time where the pacing really seemed to change or the intensity.
I was very surprised to see that Dagon was granted immunity in, what was it, July of last year?
Yep.
So, I mean, before Sussman was even indicted, it sounds like Durham was way into this Georgia Tech thing.
Well, Durham's had this since the start of 2020 at the minimum. We have messages going to Dagan and Tanakakis in June 2020, and they're referencing conversations that they had several months ago at that point. So it's entirely possible when Durham issued that statement on the IG Horowitz report in December 2019, it's entirely possible that Durham already knew something about this. And it would be interesting if we knew if that was played into the reason that he said that Crossfire Hurricane did not have a predicate. So we'll see, though. I'm disappointed. It's kind of like another point to make. I'm really disappointed that Durham could have some type of indication by June 2020, and then here we are in April 2022, and it doesn't feel like he's got it nailed down yet. He's still fighting privilege claims just now, and yeah, I mean that's concerning. It's kind of been the source of frustration where I've kind of laid that out in a few tweets recently. I don't know. It feels like Durham's going to have a conspiracy charge against Joffe and some of the others that are related and working around him. Maybe even a couple people from the Clinton campaign. I see all that coming. I don't think there's any getting around that at this point. I think everybody would be surprised if it didn't happen. But
I'm sorry. Can I ask this? How is Hillary Clinton not going to be indicted herself? Like, she should be indicted. Do you not agree with that or no?
I'm a little bit further out there, and I think that she will be indicted. But
I mean, I think she should be, but will she? I don't know.
It really depends on whether this becomes charged as a conspiracy, and then it becomes a lot easier.
It's what it should be charged as. At the bare minimum, it should be a conspiracy. Yes.
Well, we'll have to see. I mean, it seems to be heading that way.
All right, I did have my hand up, so I hate to I kind of wanted to say something as well.
Sure.
Will you let me talk, or do you want to keep going?
No, go ahead.
All right. So this is what I was trying to probably say. I went to Holy Cross, the same school that Anthony Fauci went to. And I used to think that Barack Obama was a good president. And then obviously, I grew up a little bit, and so I don't think that anymore. I think he was probably a bad president. But do I think that anything is going to come out of this Durham case? I would say no. I don't think so. I really don't. And I don't know what you guys' political preferences or how you fall, but I don't vote. I refuse to vote. And because no change happens from voting. Even though Trump was the best president that I'm 25. He was the best president that I've been alive under. I still don't vote. I just take that into account. But with the whole Durham, the whole case, I don't think anything's gonna come out. I really don't. And you can just look back at Trump not pardoning or what's his name? Not Snowden. The other guy. The WikiLeaks guy. You know what I'm talking about?
Assange.
Yeah, he didn't pardon Assange, and he should have. He fucking pardoned Kodak Black. What the fuck?
Well, it's a. I mean,
but I'm just saying. This is my opinion. Just let me say this, and then I'll let you say it. I don't think anything. I don't think there's gonna be any charges that are gonna come out of this Durham case. That's just my opinion. I could be. Hopefully I'm wrong, but that's just what I think at this moment.
Well, everybody's entitled to their opinion. I think in analyzing the body of evidence that we have, I mean, Durham has 3 people indicted. He's actually convicted one of them. But based on everything he has laid out, I expect more charges. I expect
there should be so many. Yeah, there should be more charges. I would agree with that.
Well, it's not just about whether there should or shouldn't be. I think there just is going to be. You can't
But
really avoid it at this point.
Like, if you can let me interject here,
sure.
It's just like, obviously he, like, Durham works for the government, right? He works for the government, and he's investigating, trying to indict employees of the government. And I don't know. I don't have confidence that the government will be willing to indict some of their own. I just don't think they're going to do that, especially with them being Democrats. If it was Republicans, I think it would be, like, the easier thing for them to do. But they're not going to indict Hillary Clinton. Like, they're not going to.
It really depends on where the case is
But
brought.
like, I feel like it's so obvious. We know that, like, we know this is a terrible lady. She's not a nice person, and she's broken the law, and we know this. Everybody knows this, but they don't want to, like, prosecute. They don't want to put this on the docket and prosecute her, because it's going to make them look bad, because they're covering up for her as well.
Well, look, there has to be evidence, and right now we need. There has to be emails. There has to be crimes that you can prove in court. It's not just about what you know. I mean,
Did you
see
the Durham fate, like, where the DNC was spying on Trump, like the executive office of the president? They were spying on him. Did you see that? Okay, yes. So that's a total crime.
Well, and that we talked about that quite a bit on this chat, and I would welcome you to stick around in future chats. We do these pretty regularly, and
let me follow you.
Yeah, it's not so clear that it is a crime, and based on what we looked at, Joffe had a contract to look at this data. Now, Leslie kind of laid this out really brilliantly a few weeks ago, where if you go outside the boundaries of your contract, what you're authorized to do, and you abuse your access, that's not necessarily a crime, which is surprising to a lot of people.
But now, so that's necessarily not a crime, but when you're using political money, like, which is what Hillary Clinton was doing, that's a crime. That is.
Look, I agree with you. I'm not debating against you. I'm just saying we have to measure our expectations, and we have to go on the evidence that's actually produced.
I said, I don't expect her to be indicted. I don't think it's gonna happen.
Well, I don't think we'll see.
I would hope so. I think she's definitely guilty. But
we're gonna see. We'll have you back on future chats, and we'll talk about it. We'll see what happens. So I think we're gonna pivot this one back to the filing tonight.
I appreciate you letting me talk, and I think I will leave it at that, and you can carry on with the next conversation that you want to have. Absolutely. But thank you for hearing me out.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Yep, thank you. Alrighty. Hey, Wildfire, I see you're back. If you have anything to jump in, go ahead. And Mansoor, I don't know if you have anything else to say, but absolutely jump in if you want, guys. All right, so I'm going to go back into the filing that we have tonight, and we're just going to check the docket real quick. Looking for a motion from Fusion GPS. Looks like it is not out yet, so we're going to wait on that. There we go. Hey, Wildfire, how you doing?
Hey, I'll jump in just real quick. I was driving through a dead zone out there, so I missed a little bit. So I don't know if I'm going to be repeating what someone else may have said. Just reading this response from Sussman, at first glance it seems pretty strong. That Durham should have try to get this privilege barrier pushed through before this and through the grand jury, et cetera. I'm trying to think, why this is only coming up now, why this whole case has been proceeding the way it has been. Kind of an initial thought would be, we know that Hillary, Democrats, Perkins Coie, and I'm sure plenty on the RNC side as well, hide their opposition research and everything through law firms and using attorney-client privilege to keep a bunch of it under wraps so that no one can pierce that. I could see a scenario of Durham trying to get all this, a year and a half ago, whenever they sent those subpoenas out, and if you're going to try and fight that in front of the chief judge as part of the grand jury, what do you say if you can't see what the crime is? So what do you argue? Well, Your Honor, we think that we might be able to get this lawyer online to the FBI. That's not going to probably be a winning argument. Well, now that we have an indictment, they said, fine, we'll indict him. Like, we're actually going to pursue this crime, and thinking that might bolster the argument that, okay, now we need to pierce this privilege argument. And as to whether they should have then taken it to the chief judge or whether they might have messed up, I don't know. But I could see that being how this all played out. These political operatives have been doing this a long time. They know how to hide anything incriminating behind attorney-client privilege. And so this might be part of why Sussman was indicted in the first place. We're going to get you to flip. We are going to pursue this thing against you. You may call it a small crime. You may think that we're bluffing. We're not going to indict you. Well, surprise, buddy. Here we go. That's just maybe a hypothesis, but it'd be interesting if that's what's going on here.
Yeah, I kind of wonder how much the pandemic was used to sort of disrupt this investigation, both by, people that have been accused and are involved, and also just by, the regular establishment that doesn't want to see it happen.
Absolutely. You can see just as everything has progressed, how as soon as one investigation or scandal or anything is over, a new one has to pop up immediately. How soon was it after Mueller report that we had the Ukraine impeachment fiasco? Okay, looks like Trump might actually be free to release some stuff or tell us some stuff. Oh, nope, now we can't anymore because now we're investigating him for Ukraine. Okay, and then we went through that whole thing. Same thing, then the pandemic, and then you've got the January 6th stuff. Okay, why the rush to impeach him so quick with a week left in his administration? One, in which they're still kind of trickling out there that they're going to try and say that it's an insurrection and that he engaged in whatever the right words are from the 14th Amendment, 15th Amendment, whichever one that says, you're barred from public office if you've engaged in this stuff. And so they're trying to pin him down every single step of the way as soon as something is over and done. And so, that's how they play the game. That's where the term lawfare comes from. You just tie them up in legal proceeding after legal proceeding in order to slow this stuff down until, either statute of limitations from a legal perspective or just nobody cares anymore. At least the public at large. Well, Trump's not president anymore. We got Biden in there. We had to, lie, cheat, and steal to get it. But you know what? At this point, Trump doesn't have the authority to do anything anymore. So, it's better to take that risk that they did during the elections, because a lot of other things could have happened if Trump had another 4 years. And you know what? They've played this game long enough. They won that one. You know, I'm not going to say I want to give them kudos, but they knew what they could get away with, and they got away with it.
Walker, let me ask you this, because I think we're both in the same DM chat where King was kind of filling us in on some of his thoughts. So in this filing, they point out that John Durham issued grand jury subpoenas for documents on the day that Sussman was indicted. And I'm trying to understand this because basically you can't collect additional evidence after you've indicted somebody for that charged offense. So what are your thoughts on why Durham would issue those subpoenas if he wouldn't be able to use them? Is there something there that is there a legal theory that Durham's going to be able to kind of use, to your knowledge, or is that going to be an issue, do you think, when Durham has to file, for this motion to compel, I guess?
This is out of my wheelhouse in the legal world. I've never practiced in federal courts and never got really into all the intricacies of subpoenaing in criminal cases at all. I did go back and look at Durham's motion to compel. He says on September 16th, 2021, the government issued grand jury subpoenas to law firm 1 and U.S. investigative firm, requiring them to produce in redacted form the documents previously listed on the privilege logs prepared by counsel for those entities, so that such documents would be available for admission into evidence at any trial in this matter. So I don't know how much to read into that other than it wasn't, oh, we're issuing the subpoenas on the same day and it's almost a coincidence, but we're digging into, a grander conspiracy. It's specifically so that they would be available for admission into evidence in this matter. So
yeah, it doesn't sound like that's some sort of untested legal theory they're exploring there. It sounds like they're pretty certain that makes them available.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was thinking. It's like they're both confirming exactly what happened, but they're both claiming that it's fine. Or, I mean, it seems really unusual that there's like a discrepancy here where Durham's saying, government issued these subpoenas so that we would have evidence at trial. And then the defense is saying, well, they issued it on the same day of the indictment, and therefore, this is like a second discovery, and this should have been evidence already or whatever. So it seems like there's a legal theory that I don't know if there can be two sides to the same legal theory or legal doctrine that both are using, but I can't imagine somebody as experienced as John Durham would make a mistake like that and not be able to get evidence that they intended to get.
Right. It doesn't seem like this isn't, like you said, an untested legal theory. This seems like something that happens all the time, one way or the other. Either like this shouldn't be a legal gray area, but apparently somehow it is. Unless someone is just trying to really pull one over on the judge.
Yeah, I agree.
So where's Ship? Where's King? Get in here.
Yeah, exactly. I imagine they're gonna jump in here at some point.
I'm just trying to think of topics we could talk about.
Right.
Until then, but one of the things, a lot of these privileged documents, they're all discussing items that they were producing basically to release to the media and release to other parties. And a lot of it was released to the media. And when that happens, I mean, how can you claim privilege on something that you were going to publicly release or you did publicly release? So I guess that's a big thing that Durham has in his favor. But
well, that's exactly right. I mean, the privilege claims themselves are so weak that it's like laughable that there could be this controversy over them. And it seems like the in-camera review is a really nice middle ground where, they're saying, Judge, why don't you look at 38 documents? And if these privilege claims are valid, then we're fine. But if the privilege claims are not valid, then obviously we want to admit all this into evidence. And I don't know if they can pursue some sanctions for improperly claiming privilege, or what the case, or what remediation might be available. But it seems unusual to have this level of intense fight over something that seems so straightforward.
Yeah, so I practice criminal law, but at the state level, not the federal level. And since when does the state or the feds ask for stuff? They take it. They rather stone you. They don't knock on your door. They pound your door down and they take it.
Yeah, and that's certainly how that's certainly how Mueller's team, acted when they were prosecuting. So it's there's a big distinction here between Durham's style and Mueller's style. But
yeah, I mean, it can't be said enough. And I don't know if Durham's just really being extra cautious because of the political stakes that are involved in this, and he doesn't want to play hardball with these guys. Or I don't know. I don't understand. He's got these subpoenas out there for over a year, at least the first batch, and he didn't defeat privilege. And it's like, if you're running a serious investigation and people give you a bunch of documents, like your targets give you a bunch of documents that have redactions all over them, and you don't go fight that, like, what kind of investigation are you running? And I'm really impressed with all the filings that Durham makes, and what he's laid out is a conspiracy, and what he's laid out is so impressive that it's like, he really knows what he's doing. But then on the other hand, you're like, you didn't go get this? Why didn't you go get this? I don't understand what you're doing. So
yeah, that hindsight is always 20/20, and everybody's an armchair quarterback when it comes to practicing law, and it's a very difficult sport. But maybe Durham dropped the ball once or twice. I've done it. I'm sure everybody else will admit they've done it too, but it's glaring at this point. And U.S. attorneys don't ask for stuff. They bang it down your door and they get the stuff. So it's for even a layman or a well-learned attorney, it's hard to understand either way.
I agree. Yeah, I appreciate you sharing your comments. I think those are valid points. And I see we have FOIA fan in here. How you doing tonight?
No complaints. I'm enjoying Passover. I'm enjoying my hiatus from tweeting, and I'm sorry I have to jump in and out here, but I'll just say to the last point, there's too much hindsight here, because it's not just Durham. This claim of privilege and some of the claims of privilege that were asserted go back to the early days of the congressional investigations, including Durham, including some of the actual Senate investigation, depositions. You look at Sussman's deposition, where he claimed, where Catherine Rumler claimed privilege as to the identity of Sussman's client on the Alpha allegations. The assertion was, from the very first minute, ridiculous. Anybody who's got more than 2 or 3 years as a litigator under their belt would see it from a mile away, and it wasn't challenged then. The much vaulted Senate bipartisan, investigations, they just rolled over. Any time privilege, or even so-called First Amendment privilege, was asserted, no problem. Nobody ever brought him to court. That's all I have to say.
yeah, I think Mitch McConnell and Paul Ryan had a lot to do with that.
Yeah, that's good stuff for you. Glad you stopped in. That's a good point. I mean, they have been asserting this privilege for a long time, and we saw that in the Alpha civil cases, where they were just doing blanket privilege claims, and unfortunately, maybe John Durham was relying on the civil cases to kind of flush out the privilege, which would make me pretty uncomfortable. But maybe that was part of his game plan, where he's going to leverage the civil case that was going to attack those privilege claims, and then of course civil cases got dropped. So I don't know. I hope that's not it, but we'll have to wait for the book, I guess. Does anybody else have anything they want to say or get into? Sorry, feels like I'm killing time. To some extent, I am. Kind of let everybody get some reaction in, and I still expect to have a Fusion GPS filing tonight, which we'll be able to break down too.
Maybe we could talk about there's an employee of Fusion GPS that is expected to be granted immunity at trial. What are the guesses on who that is and why?
Yeah, that's a good point of speculation. I think it's probably Laura Sego, but I'm open to anybody else's suggestions. I would just think it would be Sego because she seems like she was close to the center of everything that was going on, and it's not going to be Glenn Simpson, it's not going to be Peter Frisch, but somebody else that's in the mix, and she really seems like she would be the only one besides Berkowitz, maybe.
I was a little bit unaware of her role or even her name actually until it was mentioned, or I had forgotten it. Can you go into a little bit about her background, and is there also a possibility it could be someone like Nellie Orr?
Yeah, some people throw out Nellie Orr, but she, to my knowledge, she actually wasn't all that involved with the Alpha stuff. I think she was more on the Ukraine side and Paul Manafort, and not so much on the Alpha side. Now, Laura Sego.
Nellie was a contractor, though, right? Not an employee.
No, I think she was an employee.
Oh, was she? All right.
Don't know if there was a distinction. I mean, she worked there. I don't know. Maybe there's a distinction there. My understanding is she was an employee.
I think in testimony she identified herself as an employee. I think she said, well, I suppose a contractor can be hired, but I think she described it as she was hired by Fusion GPS. So,
okay. Yeah, I mean, Laura Sego is like the cyber expert for Fusion GPS. She really downplayed her cyber credentials in her deposition in the Alpha case, but she's touted as like their cyber expert for Fusion GPS. So hard to make sense of exactly her prowess or technical capability, but she was the person that interacted with. I think she attended the meeting at headquarters in July with Sussman and Joffe and everybody else, and I think there's some emails between her and Joffe where they discuss different claims and things like that. So
I can't retweet it because his profile is locked. But Sergey Milian, September 20th, 2021, tweeted out, "Laura Sego, folks, watch out." So yeah, I'll screenshot it and put it on my Twitter account.
All right. I don't have much to add to that one. That's interesting, though.
For what it's worth, he is a gold mine.
Sergey?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, he's a good guy. He's usually on these chats tonight. I don't think I see him here tonight. He's obviously busy these days, so.
I think he usually listens to them afterwards.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, I think he's on a different time zone, so that would make sense too.
Yeah, I think he's in Europe.
Yeah, he's definitely like 5 or 6 hours ahead. Weak Cheeks, I'm going to go to you next. I don't know if you have a question or comment, but go ahead. Weak Cheeks, what's up?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. My question is for you and the attorneys. When you say there's a conspiracy, and I'm not an attorney, but was it a conspiracy to defraud the United States government from outside the government and inside the government? Because that's what Durham sounds like he should be charging all these people with.
Yeah, so conspiracy is obviously very broad, but there's underlying predicate offenses within a conspiracy, and exactly which predicate offense that is, we don't know yet, and we don't know that it's going to be a criminal conspiracy either. So as it relates to what Durham has laid out so far, there was recently in the motion to compel, they sorry, there's a little bit of interference there, so I just muted you for a second. But in Durham's motion to compel, what we're discussing tonight is the opposition for that motion to compel. But he actually laid out a joint venture for the first time in that Hillary Clinton, Rodney Joffe, I believe Fusion GPS was named, and Michael Sussman were basically related parties working towards a common goal. And he didn't allege it was a criminal conspiracy, but he alleged they were working towards a common goal. And in that manner, he could bring in evidence from those other parties that Sussman's not necessarily CC'd on, because it shows that as they're working towards a common goal, Sussman goes to the FBI for the purpose of advancing those goals. And that's why the evidence becomes relevant to his false statement to the FBI.
But
So.
it also like he was paid from like not taxpayers, but he was paid from like political money. So that's why it's also a different class of like what we're talking about,
Yeah.
And
well, Sussman was paid through Perkins Coie, and so he wasn't paid anything. Not sure exactly what you meant by that. Weak Cheeks, did you have anything else?
No, I was just going to say is because to me, this whole thing was a conspiracy to defraud the United States government, like I just said before, from within the FBI, the DOJ, and the Hillary Clinton campaign. And there's so many levels to this. And it doesn't look like Durham's really going to go into this. It looks like I don't want to say he's covering up like Horowitz was, but I don't think he wants to do a deep dive into this. I think he wants to get a few hits and call it a day.
From a common sense perspective, yes, 100%. But the legal definition of conspiracy is a little fuzzy. It requires an overact in furtherance of, and that's arguable. So I agree with you in essence, but it's in my opinion, the legal definition is fuzzy, and that's where it creates problems.
I've just been trying to find it, but in one of Durham's recent filings, he responds to a claim that I think Sussman made a claim. Well, he's not alleging a criminal conspiracy. This is just a joint venture or a conspiracy that's not criminal. And Durham rejected that argument and said that there's no difference between a joint venture or a non-criminal conspiracy and a criminal conspiracy. So he was sort of basically laying out the argument that the language they used in their filings doesn't make a distinction between the two. It sounded like he was saying that as if he's reserving the ability to declare that this is actually a criminal conspiracy at any point.
Well, I think he is definitely going to go there. That's just my opinion, but he's going to find a couple crimes.
Hope or opinion?
Sorry?
Hope or opinion?
Well, a little
both.
bit of both. Yeah, a little bit of both.
Yeah.
You have John Podesta on record. I think we can assume that he's lying, that he didn't know anything about Fusion GPS prior to the election. I think that's really, really hard to believe. I think Durham needs a minimal amount of evidence to be able to charge that as a crime. And then you start piecing crimes together, and then you kind of have the outline of a conspiracy. Now, you reference overt acts, and I think it's important for listeners to know an overt act is not necessarily a criminal act. It's just an act that's in furtherance of conspiracy. So Durham has laid out this non-criminal conspiracy right now, and as Fear just kind of laid out, like from an evidentiary standpoint, there really is no difference. If your multiple parties are working towards a common goal, but the difference between that and a criminal conspiracy is, just that. It's like a couple crimes. It's a couple predicate offenses that are going to form the basis of what your conspiracy is or what your intention was. And there's just a litany of offenses that could fall under that, and there's plenty that you could choose from to kind of try a case under a conspiracy related to this situation. So,
all right, man. I appreciate you taking my question, man. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Hey, Michael, I saw you wanted to speak again.
Yep. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, how's it going?
Good. I'm having a little equipment issue. A quick point, kind of playing 7D chess. I don't know if Durham would be doing it, but there's a spectrum of the kind of the common interest privilege, which is a subset of attorney-client privilege, that if a number of defendants have come together truly in anticipation of litigation, and their lawyers are talking to each other about a common defense, that's generally recognized as a good claim of privilege. But I note Durham now, when he talks about a joint venture being put together, imagine the quandary or the dilemma that you're put in that the more you want to claim that there is a common interest amongst defendants, thereby enhancing your ability to claim privilege, even if it wasn't an actual attorney talking to an actual client, but rather more of a group. The more you want to claim that privilege, the more you're proving up Durham's allegation that there's a joint venture going on here. The only difference is, where are you on the timeline? Does that make sense? In other words, a bunch of people coming together in June, at what point does it become cognizant enough that it becomes a legal privilege in anticipation of litigation? Yeah. When does a conspiracy become, a bona fide attorney-client privilege under common interest? It's 3D chess, 5D chess, whatever they say. But it seems to me that lawyers at Sussman are playing with that idea a little bit with Durham and science.
Yeah, and I think your mic just cut out just a little bit there. But yeah, I mean, you can look at the Perkins-Coie contract. That was an attachment, the Perkins-Coie contract with Fusion GPS, and I think it was like number 4 or something like that in the contract, where it says you're doing your work, all your work, Fusion GPS is going to be in anticipation of litigation or for the purposes of providing legal advice to clients. So they knew exactly what they were doing when they wrote up the contract, and it's a very, very thin thread that they're trying to cover everything that Fusion GPS did from the inception,
right,
under the
right,
guise of legal advice.
But if they cover it too well, they prove up Durham's joint venture, is my point.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, they're watering it down, right? I mean, you claim every single document and every single action, including going to the media, which is like the most obvious way of destroying privilege. Is you take whatever claims and whatever documents and information you have, and you go to the media and say, hey, I want you to publish this. Well, you don't have privilege over that anymore. So it's one of the more ridiculous claims of privilege that I think we'll probably see in quite some time, hopefully, where they're claiming privilege, but they took it to the media themselves. They pushed it to the media, and they got upset when the media didn't cover it. We got a text message from the Fusion GPS co-founder to a Reuters reporter saying, "Do the effing alpha story." So they knew it was going to be in the media. They were pushing it there, and to claim privilege, I don't think they have anything to stand on. So Fauci, I'm going to add you as speaker. What's up, man?
Oh no.
Hey, Fauci, I added you a speaker. I don't know if you have a question or comment. Go ahead. All right. Come back to you. All right. Anybody have any other questions or comments or anything they want to say?
Oh, hey, Ryan, can you hear me?
Yeah. Hey, how's it going?
Sorry. Hey, yeah, good, thanks. And good to see that you have risen. And thanks again for putting one of these on. I've been listening since the beginning, but I was a little distracted. Has anyone mentioned Mark Elias yet?
No, we haven't talked about him yet.
I only bring him up because, I mean, he's pretty vocal and active out there. I can't stand the son of a bitch. I'm sure I'm not alone in that. And I'm interested in anyone's opinion on kind of when he's going to have to, because he's out there like blowing trumpets and being really visible and completely ignoring everything Durham, right? Every now and then he'll kind of do a counterpunch.
He's a
John
real whole
Turley.
100% piece of shit.
Yes, he is. And so when is he going to get the big smackdown? Is he going to come up in this trial if it happens in May, without a plea or whatever? Do we see anything kind of in his near future? Because I just want to get his ass off the map sooner than later. It's hard to. I harassed the shit out of him on Twitter. I can't believe he hasn't blocked me yet. I mean, I guess I'll give him props for that, but yeah.
Ryan, I'll step in, Ryan, and I don't mean to usurp anything, but he's untouchable. He's 100% completely untouchable. We will never be able to reach him. I'm sorry. I hate it. I hate to say that. It'll never happen.
Yeah, I feel like the guy is just
sucks.
Too smart, knows the system too well, and knows how to stay out of trouble. And it's sort of like he can do anything he wants and just knows how to just skirt the line, to be unprosecutable.
You can't kill Satan.
Yeah, well, what's so believable about that is you just see how active he is out there. Like we're not hearing shit from Weissman, Comey. I guess Strzok is a little more visible than I would imagine he probably should be. But a lot of these guys have kind of clammed up a lot. But he's just out there like he doesn't give a shit,
If he was in Pittsburgh, I'd take the misdemeanor, but he's not. So
yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
He's untouchable, and that's really what all these conversations really boil down to. All in essence is Hillary's untouchable. Fucking bedside manner Biden is untouchable. These guys, they're all untouchable. Elias is untouchable. There's nothing we can do to them but just speak about them, unfortunately.
Well, I don't know that there's obviously hasn't really been too much in development with Elias. I don't recall if he was in the grand jury or not. He was obviously in a lot of meetings with Sussman. He was CC'd on a lot of communications.
He did testify at the grand jury.
He did. Okay.
That
would seem to signal that he's not at risk. And you can read into that however you want. But yeah, I mean, if he didn't do anything wrong, he didn't do anything wrong. And we'll just have to see.
If I may give some thought to, he's probably a very good witness and probably a very good defense witness. And Durham's suggestion of joint venture participants might have been aimed at him. Keep him off the stand.
Well, I mean, it would be kind of a conflict of interest, right? Because if he can steer the ship around, his testimony and away from himself, I mean, that's pretty convenient for him.
True, but
is a top of the food chain. He's top of the food chain, like Barack. You're not gonna touch them. I mean, I wish, I hope that's the end objective of all this conversation. But honestly, that's not going to happen.
Well, look, I don't
Sadly
know.
enough.
I don't know if there's anything that's going to come in the Obama administration or the FBI or the Department of Justice or the State Department. I know there's certain individuals that we have evidence in the body of record that would suggest there might be some prosecutable crimes, and there's some situations where we can draw some inferences that something wrong happened. Whether or not Durham brings cases, I don't know. I don't buy into this theory that Durham's limited in any way. I don't think he's afraid to go after anybody. But I wrote a tweet just the other day, and I wrote a couple tweets recently. I don't see anything that's obviously building towards that. There's no reason in my mind that he would wait right now to indict anybody from the FBI if he wanted to do that. We're starting to roll through some statute of limitations. There is another FISA warrant statute of limitations coming up in a couple months. As you might remember, the last two FISA warrants have been ruled invalid and essentially illegal. So, especially that last FISA warrant, that's the worst of them all, because by then they had no evidence whatsoever. They had a lot of evidence that suggested that everything had been debunked. And for whatever reason, we haven't seen any of those crimes. And you read through the IG Horowitz report, and Stephen Soma kind of stands out. He's responsible for most of the material errors and omissions that were in the filings to the FISA court. And beyond that, we'll just have to see. We'll have to see what Durham does. I don't necessarily think he's gonna go there, though. So I don't know. Kind of rambled there for a second.
Hey, sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that one thing that got me a little bit hopeful that something could maybe happen to Elias. You see, he's campaign lawyer one, and he's all over the place. He's talked about a lot, and not usually in a great light. And one of the recent filings, I think it's from last week, and I can't remember exactly which one, but was something along the lines of, we know there was a single point of contact connectivity between Fusion and the Hillary Clinton campaign. In fact, we know who that person was. It was campaign lawyer one. How do we know that? Because Glenn Simpson and his buddy wrote a shitty book where they bragged about how Mark Elias told them, I need to be the single point of contact between you guys and the Hillary Clinton campaign. And there was something about that I think was legally not great for him. But I'm not a lawyer at all, but there was Durham seemed to have pointed that out for a reason. And look, I found this in their book. Any thoughts on that at all? Is that just not relevant stuff?
I'm sorry, I missed the first part. I was distracted there. Could you repeat that real quick?
Just the idea that in a recent filing they ID'd campaign lawyer one as being a point of conduit between Fusion and the Hillary Clinton campaign. He basically said, look, I need to be the single source of communication with you all, right? So everything goes through me in order to, ideally, I would think, minimize the exposure of anyone in the Clinton camp. And he's covered by privilege with everything. But if you can capture them saying, hey, let's plot to do this so we can do misdeeds and have me as the privilege cover, right? Well, that's using privilege intending to commit a crime. And he's literally on record doing that in Glenn Simpson's shitty book, where they brag about how Elias himself said, I'm going to be the point of contact for you all. And you talk to me and only me. And that was such a genius move because that gave us, privilege cover, something like that. And so Durham's got them on record saying that they intentionally set it up like this so that they could use privilege to potentially commit crimes, I suppose.
Yeah,
Is there anything to that?
There's a lot of indications. Sorry.
I'm just going to say thank you, Fauci, because what you just said just jumped out at me big time. It's a really, really good point you made, and I didn't remember that. Really good point.
Thanks. Well, maybe there is something there. Yeah, I got excited about it when I saw it, and it was a filing like a week ago. I think it was the Friday night one. You know, there was like two kind of back to back. It was a Sussman one and a Durham response.
Yeah, I'll have to go back and read that one. I don't think I read that one specifically.
You know, it's kind of how they operate. They have, you know, there's, I don't know, 10, 12 lawyers that work for the DNC, and any case that comes up, you know, regardless sort of the topic, they've always got the same people. You know, whether it's the Kavanaugh, you know, Christine Blasey Ford's attorneys or whatever, but it's like they completely do it just so that they can share information from one scandal or one narrative to another narrative and keep all the stories straight. And it really, I mean, it's really like a big giant conspiracy that links all of these different, you know, scandals that keep coming one after another, and it all just seems to be, it's the lawfare thing, I guess. But
well, I mean, Elias is obviously tied to a lot of these pieces, and I'm not going to accuse him of doing anything illegal, but there's a lot of questions, right? I mean, Donna Brazil wrote in her book about a situation where she asked about some Russia investigation, right? Probably their work with Fusion GPS and what they were looking into with Trump. And Elias basically told her, don't ask about that. Like, you don't want to know. So, I mean, that's very odd to tell, you know, Donna Brazil. And there's indications even as far back as negotiating the arrangement with the DNC, the funding arrangement from the Clinton campaign to the DNC,
Ryan,
which gave, yeah, go ahead.
The left is so much better organized than we are. And I think that everybody can agree upon this, that they're a hate group. And we're just trying to preserve the status quo. And it just kind of is what it is.
they have a centralized legal strategy, you know, and I don't know where the nexus is or where it all operates from, but it's always the same attorneys. It's Rumler, it's Sussman, it's Mark Elias. It's I know there's like two or three here that I'm misremembering they're on there, but it's like their entire political / legal operation all runs through the same people. So I mean, having that sort of central direction really gives them an advantage.
Yeah, because they already have their strategy planned, and we're just here proactively trying to figure out the path while they're assaulting us.
Yeah, I want to get King to jump in here. I don't know, King, if you wanted to speak tonight, but if you have any reaction to tonight's filing, I'd love to get your thoughts on everything. Everybody's curious. We spent most of the chat talking about your theories already, so love to hear it straight from you and
Yeah.
hear from you. Yeah.
Well, if you've discussed my theories, I think you know what they are. I'll be happy to answer any questions about them. I will say this. None of what I have said is news to Durham. He's a bright, experienced prosecutor, so he knows what he's doing. His strategy may have been to put the privilege issue on the back burner intentionally, let it play out, maybe take advantage of missteps that the parties make, his targets make by hiding behind privilege. You guys were just talking about the fact that you've got a select handful of lawyers who seem to always be involved. I don't know about that, but I do know in this case, you have Elias and Sussman, and Perkins Coie, basically actively shielding from disclosure things that are going on involving the Hillary campaign, Jaffe and his researchers, and Fusion GPS and Christopher Steele. That is difficult to do straight up. If you're the most honest lawyer and most honest client in the world, that's hard to do. It's a stretch to be able to keep all of that secret. I can think of one group of practicing lawyers who try to get away with it, and I would look no further than mobster lawyers. That's how they operate, and these people have done pretty much the same thing. So it's reasonable, maybe, for a prosecutor to give them as much rope as you can so they can hang themselves, because it's not typical law practice to put yourself, if you're a professional, honest lawyer, to put yourself in that position to try to conceal that kind of conduct that you have to know is going on.
Well, King, I also wanted to ask you one question. I know we DM'd about this a little bit earlier. There's one specific point in this filing tonight where the Sussman attorneys say that that Durham issued grand jury subpoenas on the same day as Sussman was indicted, and they're saying, that's causing a litany of issues. It's like a second, Durham's trying to collect more evidence, and he's not using the grand jury. But Walker Fire pointed out, like a week ago, Durham filed a motion, and he said, we submitted grand jury subpoenas on September 16th or whatever it was. So Durham's well aware that that's what they did. Obviously, he's an experienced lawyer. So, is there anything you could read into or explain to us for benefit of the audience? I mean, how is it that Durham could be so wrong about this, or is there just some legal theory that the defense is just overplaying here?
Yeah, if there is, I'm not aware of it. You've got two problems for Durham that are working here. One is when the indictment comes down, you're not supposed to continue using the grand jury to conduct discovery. And there's a basic principle in the law that stands behind that, which says that an indictment theoretically is based upon the totality of the evidence that you gather and give to the grand jury, and they assess it A to Z and make a fair and reasoned decision to indict or not indict, and what to indict for, based on the totality of what they gather in their investigation. If you continue that investigation after the indictment has come down, it kind of throws a wrench into the whole theory behind grand juries, which is enshrined in the Sixth Amendment of the Constitution, that all defendants have a constitutional right, if they're charged with a felony, to be indicted by a grand jury, which carries with it the concept that grand jury gets to see everything. But by issuing a subpoena on the date of the indictment and then not collecting that everything until later, and then not pursuing until later privilege issues, by definition, automatically, the grand jury has not seen everything. So it raises fairness issues, it raises constitutional issues, and by rule, that's why you can't do it. Why he did it here? It may have been for his grand conspiracy case, which is a different, potentially a different indictment. But by bringing the two of them together with this motion, there may be an exception, but I'm not aware of it. The other problem is if you get a grand jury to issue a subpoena, or you issue a subpoena in a pending court proceeding that's already docketed, to enforce that subpoena, either to get the respondent to show up at a deposition, show up at a trial, produce documents, deal with objections and privilege issues. You have, as the lawyer responsible for getting the subpoena enforced, you have to go seek relief from the particular judge in whose court or division the subpoena was issued. And Sussman rightly points out that in the D.C. district, the rules specifically say the only judge who is in charge of and has authority over grand juries is the chief judge. And Judge Cooper is not the chief judge. So you've kind of bypassed the judge you would normally go to. And judges don't like that. They think that's stepping in their fellow judges' territory. And it could be just, you could read the rules as prohibiting it, but even if you didn't have rules, judges don't care for situations where they're having to do some other judge's work for them. And that's kind of what's going on here as to those subpoenas.
If I can sort of repeat my question now that the King is here, these subpoenas were issued, and the documents were produced, but they were produced, with privilege claims in redacted form. Is the information that was redacted, when is that considered actually produced? Is it only until the privilege claim is broken, or is it considered produced when the redacted information is produced, if you know what I mean?
It's deemed to be non-produced until you ordered the party subject to the subpoena is ordered to unredact it. For example, I as a lawyer can send my client a long opinion letter, and the first paragraph of the opinion letter consists of a verbatim quote from today's newspaper. Well, the newspaper article by itself is not privileged. It's not. It's publicly available, and many lawyers say, okay, you can have that part of the letter, but everything else I'm going to redact. That's what you do when you redact a letter that may be partially privileged. But you still have withheld production of the portion of the letter that you claim privilege for.
So,
if somebody like Durham says no, that privilege is not valid, you've either waived it or it's not really privileged. It's not a confidential communication between a lawyer and a client, or for some other reason.
So
you have to bring it to the judge, let the judge order. The judge can look at the letter in camera, in secret, and decide who's right. Is it privileged? In which case he'll rule that the redaction stays, or if he decides that the prosecutor is correct, he'll order the document to be produced unredacted.
So basically, if a subpoena is issued before indictment, and there's materials produced before indictment. But with privilege claims, anything that's claimed privilege, whether the privilege claim is valid or not, basically gets removed from the evidence that can be used at trial.
Yeah.
I mean,
a redacted document is treated for trial purposes as if the part that's redacted is not part of the evidence.
so what prevents a defendant, from just claiming privilege on everything and then the privilege claim just being bogus? But the effect is that it prevents any of that evidence from being used at trial.
First, in general, you depend on the court depends on lawyers who have ethical obligations and
supposedly
and who are professionals to make those privilege objections in good faith. If let's say a defendant does that, who doesn't have a lawyer, and he just withholds everything on the basis of privilege, not a defendant but a witness, withholds everything on the basis of privilege. If the lawyer who has had the privilege, the subpoena issued, kind of gets a feel for what he's doing, he does what Durham did here. He'll give the judge reasons why the judge should look at those documents unredacted and make a call as to whether they are legitimately privileged.
King, I've got one more question for you. I appreciate you coming in and just slamming with all these questions. I appreciate you doing that.
I'm sorry I was late, but I had commitments.
I really appreciate you coming in. And I have one more question, and it's kind of on the same point. So, in-camera reviews, I mean, should we understand that to mean, is that more typical of like grand jury proceedings, or is it used in trial? Is it unprecedented that there's privilege concerns as it proceeds towards trial?
It's in complex cases, it's more frequent than not that you'll have issues regarding privilege. The more documents you have, the more documents you have that have lawyers' names on them, the more privilege comes up, and whether or not the privilege is valid. I've had civil cases, a couple of criminal cases, where massive amounts of time are spent arguing privilege, going through with a fine-tooth comb documents to see if they are privileged or might be privileged. Lawyers even bring in third-party lawyer ethical consultants to review some of it to make sure that you have a good faith basis, legal basis, and ethical basis for claiming privilege. And where the parties can't work it out, they will often ask the court to review documents in camera to make a call. So it's how close that happens to trial depends on the schedule, depends on the volume of documents, that sort of thing. But in this case, I think it's inordinately too close to trial because, as Sussman points out in his motion, subpoenas were issued to these people back in as early as March 2021, and privilege was asserted then, and again in July 2021. So it's been months in advance of the indictments where the privileges were asserted, and Durham did not take it to court to challenge him. He could have.
All right, I appreciate that. I'll give you a break for a minute. I was thinking earlier. I mean, reading through this filing, that as a layman, as like a non-lawyer, I thought it was a strong filing, but I find it really weird in certain sections how contradictory it is. And I think somebody pointed this out earlier on my feed, where they're saying these statements are irrelevant, or these documents under question are relevant, but they also say, well, we have to change up our entire defense if you let them in. And they're also saying, Durham, issued these subpoenas really late. And then like the next sentence is, well, he actually issued them a year ago, well before Sussman was indicted. So it contradicts itself in a few sections.
I
Really,
think he's talking about two sets of subpoenas.
Yeah.
An early set that went out between March and June or July 2021, and then a second set that went out the day of the indictment, is the way I read it. But the first set triggered some privilege assertions that were probably way overbroad.
I mean, do you have any thoughts on just the strength of the privilege motions themselves? Because we talk about the objective legality and the proximity to the trial, but the privilege itself just seems so laughable. I mean, they took all this information and they gave it to the media, and they cussed at the media until they ran the stories that they wanted to push out there. So, I mean, on that basis, and the blanket claim of privilege, and claiming it's all in anticipation of litigation and things of that nature, when it's clearly political opposition research. I mean, just the weakness of the privilege, is that going to factor into the judge's decision and their determination to grant the motion to compel, or at least do the in-camera review?
I can only guess. I don't know. If the judge does the in-camera review, I can think of several hypotheticals. What if he does the in-camera review and sees evidence of a crime that clients are participants in? Right there, that establishes there's no privilege. So then he has to decide: is it just too late to allow these documents to come into evidence? I at that point, I see a decision. Maybe he can split the baby. Give Durham the documents because there's no privilege, clearly, but you can't use them in trial. The judge could just avoid the in-camera review altogether on the theory that this is not my decision. You have to go to the chief judge because it's a grand jury subpoena. On the rest of the privilege, or at least, Ryan, I think you're right about the weakness of the privilege assertion here. The anticipation of litigation is almost specious. There are very few documents that are between a lawyer and the client without being copied on third parties who are not clients. If that happened, that's not privileged because it's not confidential. So unless the person being copied is an agent or employee of the client, but that was not what was going on here. They basically copied Fusion on everything, and Fusion was never the client.
Quick question. At what point is the superseding indictment off the table or restricted by the rules of criminal procedure?
There's no rule restricting it. As long as you do it before the jury is impaneled and sworn in, at that point, jeopardy attaches. But before that, you can have a superseding indictment. Whether that, now some judges will say, yes, you have a legal valid superseding indictment, naming new defendants, bringing new charges, but we're going to sever the current 1001 charge against Mr. Sussman and try it right now as scheduled and let you try the rest of it later.
King, is there any tolling of the statute of limitations by the filing of the original indictment vis-a-vis a superseding? Is there any tolling that goes on, or is that not the case?
No. It only adds to the charge that's already been filed. Any additional charges, any charges based on other separate conduct, no, it's not told. Any additional defendants that may be brought in, it's not told.
One more quick question, King, and then I'll give you a break. I'll take a couple questions. We have a couple people that have been patiently waiting, but I wanted to pose this to you, and I think I asked you in DMs, but just for the benefit of everybody, I mean, is there anything stopping John Durham's kind of laid out this conspiracy case? Is there anything stopping him from going to the grand jury tomorrow and say, I want to subpoena these communications and see what's under these redactions? I mean, isn't that an available option to him other than pursuing it through this Sussman case?
Yes, absolutely. He just can't use it as discovery in the Sussman case.
Do you have any theories on why he wouldn't just do that instead?
For some reason, he has wanted to put off the ultimate decision as to whether he's going to pull the trigger on a crime fraud exception for privilege. That would bust through everything. And he probably has evidence to let him do that. But with the pending case, something tells me that he doesn't want to do that until after the Sussman trial is over.
All right. Thank you. I'm sorry to ambush you when you walked in the door, but it's so nice to have you on these chats, answering all our questions. Robin, I'm going to add you. I don't know if you have a question or comment, but go ahead, Robin. Sorry, Robin, are you there?
Oh, hi. Yes, I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes. How's it going?
Oh, good. Thanks. My question goes back to the time. I want to, first of all, thank you guys for all you're doing. This is just amazing and very educational. My question goes back to this timeline thing. First of all, in Friday's release from Durham, he mentions on page 13, he says something like, well, let me just read it. Second, defense counsel's further entreaties that there is no meaningful likelihood that Tech Executive 1 will be prosecuted because more than 5 years have passed since the defendant's September 2016 meeting are based on naked and uninformed speculation. Indeed, defense counsel is not and could not be aware of all the evidence that the government has collected and continues to collect, or of the possible violations of law it is investigating. So to me, that plus his discovery of the text message, doesn't that make it seem like he is not afraid of this thing being 5 years have passed and the statute of limitations stuff? I think his strategy is that he's using all of this stuff, isn't he? I guess my question is, with that statement and does the text message thing kind of start the time clock over?
Yes, that's a good question, King. I think I'll frame this up while you take a break for a second, maybe, or if you want to jump in, go ahead. But I mean, I was just going to comment on a couple points you made. I mean, it's a good question because that's something a lot of people are asking. But I think what Durham's really laid out here is a conspiracy case, and a conspiracy statute of limitations goes 5 years from the last overt act. And if he is going to pursue a conspiracy case, there's actually quite a few overt acts that you can look at for Joffe and certain people that were working with him. They actually connected with Daniel Jones, who was working on a Senate investigation. And Daniel Jones didn't complete his report until 2018. I don't have specific dates on exactly when and what type of assistance Joffe provided relate to that investigation, but I know he did provide some data and some other analysis there where you could probably infer that there are some overt acts that Durham could look at. I think we also have some indications where Joffe is apparently in contact with different Congress members. So I think that's potentially more overt acts. Obviously, I think Durham's kind of alluded to that in filings, even where there's some more acts that we don't necessarily know about, but Durham's not going to let it. He's not going to let it just creep by the statute of limitations. He's got something in mind, and he's got a theory of the case that I think he's willing to bring. And King, I don't know if you want to jump in on that point.
I want to supplement it. Yeah. I'll just speak personally. When I got interested in this in February 2017, I wasn't retired at the time, but I was reading and news articles and seeing things on TV that disturbed me greatly, involving anonymous sources reporting to the press from classified information, and it seemed to be orchestrated. You could smell there was a conspiracy afoot inside the government to take down our new president, and you could sense it. You had, and others saw it too, like Devin Nunes, and that's when I started following it. So at some point, the outside the government actors, people like the Clinton campaign, Joffe, Fusion GPS, Steele, who were trying to create a false narrative to present to the FBI, which is a crime. Who knew that was going on? It would drive who gets prosecuted, but certainly somebody, and probably more than one, were involved in a group effort to present false evidence to the FBI for whatever illicit reason. At some point, that morphed into things that began happening inside the government. You had FBI, you had CIA with friends in the media who started reporting things like the Flynn Kislyak call, which was classified, reporting about what was in behind the scenes in the ICA, the intelligence community assessment about Russian interference. You had reporting about what Durham is focusing on right now, which is the Alpha Bank story, the FBI's investigation of Alpha Bank, which was counterintelligence, by the way. So there's actually two possible conspiracies going on. They may have intersected at some point, but as to the inside the government conspiracy, overt acts were happening as late as June 28th, when they filed false application to get the renewal of the Carter Page FISA warrant. And then they collected documents and surveillance under that warrant through the end of September, those are overt acts as well. So as to the inside the government conspiracy, you've got overt acts on record lasting at least into the fall of 2017. To what extent the people like Jaffe helped that, they could be caught up in the same illicit activity, same conspiracy. And then you have a cover-up after that in testimony to Congress, interviews in the Mueller investigation, etc. So I'm not concerned about statute of limitations, frankly.
Thank you for that, both of you.
Yeah, thank you. That's a good question. I think that's a great point by King right at the end. I mean, the cover up is probably 3 times the size of Russiagate. I mean, for IG Horowitz not to come up with anything, for Mueller, obviously, whatever he was doing, he didn't come up with anything. And then, the Senate and the House, they both had investigations, and they were steered away from this information too. I mean, when you hear Kash Patel say he's never heard of Rodney Joffe or Chuck Dolan until we get these filings, that's amazing. That's truly amazing. 6 years later to finally get that out there. So, Love, I'm gonna.
Sorry. I'm
Yeah,
in
sorry.
total
Go ahead.
agreement. I'm in total agreement with that. This whole Georgia Tech, EOP, DNS stuff, the stuff that was completely off the radar, and to have Durham just sort of uncover this stuff and throw it out there was shocking. It was really. I mean, it came from nowhere, but it was completely fleshed out, and I don't know. So.
Yeah, it's weird times, right? I mean, we learned about Rodney Joffe, and now we're getting these indications that there's something really wrong in the Department of Defense, and there's something really wrong with DARPA, and we get these indications of these emails and these chat logs, and they have some involvement with the hack of the DNC, either analyzing it or doing some type of attribution analysis, and obviously, it's sort of weird to think about, but we have more questions today than I think we did, 3 or 4 years ago. So we'll see what happens. Love, I think you've been waiting patiently. I don't know if you have a question or comment. Or King, I don't know if you were going to jump in, but go ahead.
No, I'm open for questions.
Okay. Sorry, Love, I added you. I know you were waiting for a while, so I want to give you an opportunity. I don't know if you have a question or comment. Otherwise, if anybody else has any questions or anything they want to ask, go ahead.
Hi, how is everybody?
Good. How are you?
Good, thank you. I wanted to know if you could hear me clearly because I'm using a headset.
It's a little bit quiet and a little bit broken up, but I think we can understand you.
Oh no. Okay, thank you. Where's Sydney? The military lawyer. We haven't heard from her in a long time.
I'm sorry, Sidney Powell, or did you mean Sidney Blumenthal?
Sydney Powell.
Yeah, I think you're right. I haven't heard anything from her for quite some time. I don't know what she's up to these days. I know she got in a little bit of trouble there talking about the election machines. Drawing a blank on what they're called. So Dominion, I think. So I think she's been kind of busy with that. Yeah, hopefully she pops up and we can hear from her sometime and see what she's been up to.
I'm having a hard time too because going into these spaces and it's like, I've been doing research since 2020, so I'm well aware, from my research, you go here, you go there, you go the other way, and if it all correlates and comes together and back to the same thing, that's what it is. You know what I'm saying? There's your answer.
Yep.
So that's what I based my research upon, and it's really, really bothering me that I'm going into these spaces and nobody's talking about, the fact that I'm well aware that there is an alliance that's out. There is an Earth alliance that's out to, for the better of humanity, and there are people, that have left, these bad guys, and that, like Elon, for example. We know that he wanted to put chips in our heads. We know that everything he wanted to do, he was basically like a villain, and now he's like trying to be on the best part for humanity, wanting to give a speech on Twitter. But nobody's talking about it. Like everybody's like doom and gloom, like, oh, we're screwed, and nobody's talking about the fact that there are good guys. That God works through us. He works through us, and there are good guys that are doing things, and nobody wants to believe that. I get attacked every time I talk about it. Nobody wants to hear that something good is going to happen, and nobody wants to hear that there's good people doing good things.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I mean, you can see good every day if you look for it. I mean, we don't get that in the media, right? I mean, they're not going to. We don't see those good stories anymore. I remember, newscasts growing up. It used to end like every show. The last 5 minutes was just like a heartwarming story, and it doesn't seem like we see that anymore. And yeah, I mean, there's people doing amazing things every day, and hopefully nobody's sitting around Twitter all day, because it's an incredible world, it's an incredible society that we live in, and people are doing wonderful things out there. So it's not all doom and gloom. You just have to look for the good. And hey, sorry, didn't mean to interrupt myself. I think that's a great point, Love. Gonna interrupt myself to add Fool Nelson as a speaker. It's always good to get him in here. Oops.
If Fool doesn't want to talk, I got something to say.
Okay, let's do it.
I want everybody to step back and appreciate what Durham has done so far. He's done an amazing job, and he has some challenges ahead, particularly with the Sussman case. I view it as he's trying to perform a high wire act, literally. Here's from a trial lawyer's standpoint. Here is what keeps him up at night. His jury pool is going to be probably 90% Democrat, and according to national polls, the majority of Democrats still believe Trump did something wrong with Russia. He colluded, conspired he was subject to blackmail, whatever. They believe that. They believe that happened. So Durham is facing the prospect of having one or more people who are on the jury who go in there believing that Trump and Russia did something bad. So what is wrong then with a respected lawyer from DC with a respected firm, Democrat firm, by the way, who has worlds of experience in the cyber world, having worked in that capacity at the FBI or DOJ? What's wrong with him taking some computer data and taking it to the FBI and saying, I think you need to check this out, given that it relates to the thing they know in their bones happened? Trump colluded with Russia. That's the kind of jury he's potentially facing and having to convince beyond a reasonable doubt that Sussman lied to the FBI, and it was material. That's why, in proving his case, Durham is going to want to tell the whole story. Tell the story of how the Hillary campaign, hired Sussman, retained him to put together this package of material with the help of the computer techies, in particular Jaffe, and with the help of Fusion GPS to put together something that appears on the surface to be worthy of investigation by the FBI. But in reality, it merely presents a narrative they can take to the press and hopefully get some votes for Hillary Clinton in the election. That's his challenge. And the high wire part of it has to do with how far will the judge let Durham go in telling that story. Because the further it gets away from the core issue, did Durham lie and was the lie material, the harder it is to get the judge to say, yeah, that's relevant. I'm going to let that come in. It's probative. It's not going to mislead the jury and send them off on some rabbit trails that they don't need to be spending their time on. I'm going to let you tell that whole story, A to Z, to the jury. Because typically a single charge lying to the FBI case can be tried in most situations in 2 or 3 days. And that's not what Durham is going to be trying here.
I kind of think I'm just going to chime in here. I'm really appreciative of Durham's strategy in laying out the case as he has, and I feel like if I were a jurist, I need that story, and I think it's all pertinent, and especially against like what you were saying about what the jury pool might be like. So
a dog's coming in.
I
thank
was
you.
going to say something else, but I forgot. So I'll just say goodbye. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. It's good stuff. I think you had some good points there. And FOIA, I saw you became speaker. I don't know if you had a question or comment or if you were just hanging out.
Mostly just hanging out. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I had to jump in and out earlier. I have to tell you, it's a good thing I'm not on the jury pool. I think materiality is a big problem. Between you and me, the FBI knew or should have known that Steele was working for the Hillary campaign. I mean, gosh, and they didn't give a crap. So why would they have given a crap? They knew Sussman was working for the Hillary campaign. They just didn't know that when he approached with this particular information, he was doing so on their behalf. But I don't know. If I was working there, I would have assumed he was. But, to me, I won't lose any sleep if Sussman gets acquitted. All I want to see happen is for more facts to come out. And boy, have a lot of facts come out in this case. And I think just getting the history written accurately and getting the facts out is really more important than whether Sussman gets convicted. All right, if he gets convicted, what's he going to spend? 6 months in jail? He'll lose his law license, but that's just one guy. The more important thing is that this story gets out and people realize what the hell was really going on.
Don't you think by Cooper's response the other day that he, by dismissing or denying the dismissal, don't you think he's starting to get it a little bit, and he's seeing where Durham's going, I think, a little bit. I mean, that's my own idea or opinion anyway.
Well, the only place he gets in this trial is at most convicting a one guy of a 1001 charge. So what's he going to get? 3 months in jail? 4, 5, 6?
Well, at least he
just
got something.
Well, the more important thing is, though, I mean, really, in the big picture, the much more important thing is that all of us know this story now. Whether one guy goes to jail for a few months or not, that's really besides the point.
I think to your point, it's more important to get the story out there, but it's more important for Durham to get this motion to compel through and to get these documents finally, because whatever's in them is going to be damning. I mean, whatever Fusion GPS and Clinton and Joffe have been fighting this hard to hide, it's going to be good. I mean, it's going to be good stuff, and hopefully Durham can use that to bring conspiracy charges, because I really think it's going to take a major criminal case for the media to actually cover this and for people to actually learn what happened. It's an unfortunate time that we find ourselves on. And I don't want to rant too much about the media, which I do pretty often, but nobody's digging into the minutia of this. I mean, this is the only chat. This is the only place you can go. And unfortunately, we're limited to a few hundred people, but this is the only place you can go and actually dig into the details and start to understand what really happened. And it's only when you get into the minutia of it that you can understand how bad this was. And, it's going to take a conspiracy case, I think, for this to get on CNN or MSNBC or ABC or CBS. So that's what I hope to see. I hope Durham's building a conspiracy case, and I think this is a building block to do that.
Yeah, it's sort of a deal. We aren't fortunate enough to write the history books, and Durham, with his legal filings, isn't fortunate enough to write the history books. And unless there's convictions and people legitimately held accountable, basically, amongst the wider public, we're always going to be seen as conspiracy theorists, yet we're all well aware of what's been going on. So it's kind of it's an accountability thing. And we're just tired of people not being held accountable.
Right.
Hey, Mass, did you have something?
Yeah, just real quick. I've tweeted this out before, and about 2 years ago or so, Andy McCarthy said that don't expect Durham to go scorched earth like Weissman. And, I guess I kind of appreciate that when you look back and what Weissman tried to do and all the lives he destroyed along the way. The second thing is, I don't know. There was always you always heard about the Dream Team prosecutors, the Mueller prosecutors. Do we actually know how many prosecutors Durham has? I mean, this case is huge, and what type of team does he have? Because it's just I haven't heard that he's got like 19 prosecutors like Durham had. I mean, like Mueller.
Yeah, I don't think I have an exact number on the number of investigators or lawyers on the team. I know when we got the last set of financial statements, he was spending considerably less than Mueller was.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're set to get another set of financial statements here in a couple weeks, so maybe we'll be able to draw some inferences. Maybe he's hired some more people, which would be interesting.
And then the other thing I was just going to bring up real quick, and when I don't that word intent. There's a great cross-examination of Comey by Gowdy about his whole thing about Comey couldn't prove intent, and Gowdy said he asked him what false statements are used for what, and Comey said false statements are used for evidence of intent in a criminal prosecution. And Gowdy basically said you would prove intent by showing the jury circumstantial evidence of a complex scheme that was designed for the very purpose of concealing. So that's what these people are doing here. So, these documents, to me anyway, whether he gets them now for this trial or, I think that's what this whole thing is about. He's trying to gather a bunch of circumstantial evidence to prove to the jury, because I think like Gowdy said, nobody's going to come out and admit they committed a crime. So is one of Durham's thing, is he going to have to prove intent?
Yeah, he is, and as you said, he'll do that with circumstantial evidence and direct evidence from witnesses who were involved and talked to the accused.
Yeah. All right. Well, I was just.
Yeah, materiality is a different animal, though. It's and that's the big issue here. What if Sussman lied about not having having a client? He said he
Right.
didn't. He really did. So what? That's the issue. So is this a so what lie, or was it material? Did it really mean something in terms of the FBI's investigation? That's what Durham's really focusing on trying.
Yeah, on this trial here, but I guess I was just looking for the conspiracy side of it, because anyway, so I just thought that exchange between Gowdy and Comey was right on with what Durham is trying to do here.
The conspiracies are harder to prove. Let's just start there than a single false statement. They're much more complex, much harder to prove, because you have to show not just a single person's intent, but a group's intent and common purpose and agreement to carry it out.
Yeah, I think Andy McCarthy, again, back about 2 years ago, said that he was going to have to prove conspiracy, and it's a very high bar, and he's going to need people to flip. That was it.
That's generally the case. Yes.
Yeah. All right.
I just, hey, how are you guys doing? I just wanted to say to the host who said, what is Simpson hiding? It's obvious if you've been following the case what he's been hiding. It's the great Trump meeting with the Russians that they've been hiding. Essentially, he was working with the Russian lawyer Niskayev, or Miskayev, I don't know how to pronounce her name. And on the same day that he's working with them, she ends up going to Trump Tower. It's very obvious that he sent her there in kind of an entrapment to kind of create this whole story of like, oh my God, he met with the Russians. And he says that on one of the Sunday shows with Chuck Todd, and Chuck Todd directly asks him about it. And Chuck Todd says, in a very odd coincidence, on the same day that you're working with her on your book, she ends up going there and she doesn't tell you. Did you think that she was playing you? And he ends up basically saying something along the lines of, well, we just don't know. We wish we knew more. Look that clip up. Chuck Todd and Simpson. And that's, if for anybody who's wondering, what is Simpson hiding? That's what he's hiding. There's either more evidence that occurred, or it's just going to be that interview alone is all you really need to know. And anybody who's been following this, that's my guess, is just because I've been following a little bit. That's probably what's going to come up.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'll have to pull up that clip. I don't think I've seen that before, but I think it's been established in the record. Natalia, I think, has said it publicly, and I think Glenn has confirmed it subsequent to that, that he did send her to that meeting. Ostensibly, it's related to a different case, but they did lure that out there where they were going to provide damaging information on Hillary Clinton. So the exact intent or purpose behind that is really unclear, but yeah, that'll be another angle that we have to look for as this hopefully develops.
I'll try to DM you the clip. Yeah,
yeah, that'd be great.
He first he basically says after the answer, he always says, I always cut this part out when I share it. He goes like, "Oh no, the MI6 agent is a genius and he's an expert in the field." But in the second part of his answer, he goes, I don't think he ever admits that he sent her there, because that would be obvious of entrapment. Well, I don't think it's evidence of an actual crime. Let's assume, if you're talking about actual criminality, I don't know what it is, but we know what the truth is now, and we know that this is a complete setup from every single possible angle. There's literally nothing there, which is shocking to some of us who went into this going like, I don't know, Trump's a kind of a mogul. Maybe he did have business dealing. Like when I first heard about this, I was like, all right, the man's a billionaire. Maybe he had some My guess is that he was a billionaire who had business dealings with Russians who happened to be mobsters who they never told him that. He just has a lot of dealings with a lot of people, and he didn't know the people who he was dealing with, and he was going to get screwed on it. But it turns out that every single part of this is there's nothing there. And I'll send you the clip. I'll just go look for it and I'll send it to you.
Yeah, that'd be great. I'd appreciate that. I'll be happy to tweet that out. I'll open this up if anybody else has any questions or comments. I'm actually kind of waiting. I assume we're going to get a filing from Fusion GPS any minute now in opposition to the motion to compel. That was referenced in the filing tonight from the Sussman lawyers on page 2. So I assume that's going to be filed tonight. We have been getting some late filings, so I guess we might have an hour, but hopefully any minute now. So anybody else have any questions, comments?
I see a new filing on court listener, number 71 on the document, or on the docket.
Yeah, so that's the one we've been talking about tonight. But in that new filing on page 2, it references an additional filing to come from Fusion GPS. So that's going to be interesting. And I'm going to stay up and read that because I assume it's still going to come tonight. Fool Nelson, I see you're a speaker now. What's up, man?
Not too much. I'm pretty sweaty. Just got off the basketball court. Yeah, I've been playing so much basketball. Oh, of course. I never lose. Yeah, I've been playing so much basketball. I've been missing these things. So I'm glad you guys went late. And I'm not tired enough so I can actually come on here.
Perfect.
But yeah, what have we been talking about? Been pretty eventful the last couple of days, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I completely riffed for the first hour. I'm glad King kind of jumped in and saved me. So
yeah, I didn't actually know this was happening tonight. Maybe I should retweet it.
Yeah, it works.
I'll find
it. Do you have any reaction to the filing tonight that you want to share with everybody, Fool? Or
I think like you were saying in some of the chat that it's like a pretty good argument, I guess, but I'm not like I don't understand the law like enough to really. I don't even know why I should even comment on it. I'm sure King covered that stuff immaculately. I mean, like I don't like being redundant, so I haven't listened to this entire conversation. So I'm sure whatever I'm going to say was probably already covered. So I'm probably just not really even going to comment on it. But it's just like when I read it, I'm like, it seems like a good argument, some of this stuff, but who knows? I'm not a lawyer.
Okay, well, thanks for sharing that. That one guy, I added you as a speaker. I don't know if you have a question or comment, but oops. I think that was my fault.
I just want to report, I just checked Pacer, and which ties you directly into the docket, and nothing new has been filed.
Okay. Huh. Hopefully it comes soon. Otherwise, it'd be weird, I guess, if it came tomorrow. But maybe it will. Oops. That one guy, it's giving me error when I try to add you, so I apologize. I don't know what the issue is.
Yeah, I just tweeted that clip I talked about to you. It's a longer clip. It's in there somewhere. If you watch it, you'll see it.
Okay, thank you.
Nobody? We're going with dead air? What happened?
Yeah, dead air.
Well, I will say about that Vessel Niskaya meeting that I'm pretty sure she said that she wasn't directed to go there. I've listened to many like interviews of Natalia, and I'm pretty sure she said that she wasn't like directed to go there. But I've never like traced back like the emails, like basically who sent her to go there. You know what I mean? Like it was she was supposed to be, like had a relationship with like the general prosecutor of Russia. I forget his name, Chaika or something like that. And I guess Rob Goldstone called him the crown prosecutor or whatever it was. But I've always wanted, maybe Walk of Fire or somebody knows, but I can't remember. I've always tried to figure out who the hell actually just like sent her. Because it seems like all of a sudden the Agalarovs are like basically involved out of nowhere, but I don't know who like actually was behind that entire thing, which it could be, I guess, Simpson, but it doesn't seem like Veselnitskaya knows. She's pretty much denied that Simpson sent her. I'm pretty sure.
I didn't realize that she said that she denied that on record. What? It's
yeah,
very
like I've seen. I've like watched her like some interviews with like Lee Stranahan and some other people. I'm pretty sure she has.
Well, it's not evidence, but the fact that you're working with Simpson on a book about Trump and Russia, and supposedly, allegedly, you don't tell him while you're working with him. You disappear for a day, and you go to Trump Tower to meet the Trumps, and you don't bring this up. Is that what I'm supposed to believe? That you're literally talking about Trump Russia with Simpson?
I don't think she was
book.
I don't think she was working on a book. I thought
he wasn't. He was using her as a source.
So she was given some sort of special visa to enter the states dealing with the Bill Browder case, right?
Yeah, she was working on Bill Browder, Magnitsky stuff.
So like the only thing that actually
I don't understand the she was working on a book about Trump.
Yeah, but I mean the only thing that actually allowed her to be
Simpson
in the state to participate in that meeting was some sort of special waiver from the State Department or the Attorney General. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they always talk about it as like some waiver that Loretta Lynch gave or something like that, but I don't think that's even factual.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say, but it's like you go back to the root, you know, and there was some sort of exception given that allowed her to even be in the States to be there for that meeting. And I kind of wonder if that's the ulterior motive right at the beginning.
Yeah, I have to go back, and it's been so long since I've looked in that. But I've watched so many interviews with her, and the general consensus I come with that she was unaware. That Simpson definitely didn't tell her to do that. That she wasn't really provoked to go there by Fusion, at least. But it was like I feel like she was just like, I want to talk to the campaign because she wants to get. She was concerned about the Magnitsky Act. She wanted to get it dropped. I mean, that was her main thing.
Correct me if I'm wrong. She met with Simpson the day before and the day after.
It might have been the same day.
Was it?
Like before and after she went to the tower. And that's not saying that any of those other guys like Akhmetshin, like they're all connected to Simpson too, I think, and other people.
Yeah, if I remember right, they were both in court the morning of, and then she had dinner with Simpson or something the day after. It was something like.
Yeah, that sounds right.
So how does she not mention this? Like she's talking to Simpson. How does she just not mention this? Like Simpson's like,
that's I find surprising that she wouldn't be like, oh, I just met with Don G. I mean, that could have happened. I think they were like at some like party or something after that with it was some Clinton connected. No, I can't remember. But it doesn't seem like either of them said like, oh yeah, I mentioned that I went to Trump Tower. You would think she would mention that, guaranteed.
But. Well, as Simpson says, we are shocked and we wish we knew more. Please.
I think what's most weird about the Trump Tower deal is because like everyone's got a plausible, deniable story, right? Like Veselnitskaya is there working on Prevazon or whatever the hell she's doing. Simpson already has a working relationship with her. So yeah, it's like normal that he would meet with her. Oh, she doesn't even speak English, so I don't know what the hell she's saying. State Department, as sketchy as it is, and I really think it's sketchy, or at least they would have known. Anyway, they've got plausible, stories for letting her in also on that case. On and on. The most suspicious people are the ones like setting up, Don Jr., I think. The language in Rob Goldstone's email is just fucking crazy. And that's what they got the most heat for, too, was just showing up. Doesn't even matter. They showed up. Look at this email. It's on fire. And if you dig into the source on that, Goldstone's even like, hey, man, kind of complaining to Eamon. Like, hey, man, I'm getting totally screwed for doing this like you asked me. And Eamon's kind of like, oh, I don't know, man. Everything's cool. So whoever put them up to that, or whoever decided to do that, and like Goldstone's talked about it a lot, but like his email is just like totally cooked. And I always thought that's the weirdest, hardest to explain stuff. Even though
the person that was there that doesn't seem to be there for some sort of preordained purpose was the translator. You know, if you want like a good account of what happened at that meeting, look at what the translator said.
Yeah.
Is that Akhmetchin?
No, that said that the translator was the ex-State Department dude, and he seemed like he was on the up and up. He's just like, nothing bad happened. It was short meeting, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
I mean, you had like
Cavaladze, right?
Yeah, Cavaladze. No, he wasn't the translator though. Ike wasn't the translator. It's the other dude.
Samorchinov.
Oh yeah,
something like that.
Right. Which is real funny with the 302s that were released. You know, there's one that's cited in the Mueller report a bunch, and so that one was unredacted. But there are a couple more with him, and apparently when the agent showed up to interview him, he'd been drinking a bunch of whiskey that night, and so he's real open with them. He's like, "Yeah, come on in." He tells him all this stuff, and then calls him up the next day and says, "Oh, sorry, I was drinking. Let me get a lawyer and come talk to you again."
See, I feel like Walkfire. Do you remember I feel like Vessel in the Sky and then went to a party or something after that. There was some other like Clinton related dude.
They went to there was the film showing.
Yeah.
Of the
Magnitsky related something or other.
Yeah, the Magnitsky story. It was the quote unquote the true story of the Magnitsky Act.
If you guys haven't seen that movie, it's a pretty good movie actually.
And Akhmetchin was there, and somewhere I think in maybe the State Department emails that were leaked. There's some photos of them at the party, candid shots that people were taking and some sending over to them. A lot of crazy stuff there. But I think right after the tower meeting, they came back down and went to just a dinner with Simpson, Ed Lieberman.
Lieberman. That's the one I was thinking of.
Yeah, and I think they went to dinner either that night or the next day, but I think it was that night. And if I remember right, they all say, "Oh no, none of us talked about that. We had no idea that Simpson was working on the same thing." She gave a written statement and a couple exhibits to, I think it was the Judiciary Committee back in 2017, pretty early on. I haven't looked at them in a while, but I think that's where she really lays it out. Like, no, I had no idea, and here's how I got the visa. And I mean, I think it was Mansour that was just talking. Like, it all is plausible, I guess, but it's still just it's so many coincidences all stacked together that it's hard to really believe.
What isn't plausible that she leaves Trump Tower and then she doesn't say anything about it the rest of the night. Right. That's the one thing I'm like, there's no way.
So
I just met with John Jr. and Paul Manafort and Jared Kushner. There's no way she didn't blab about that.
You guys were saying that Glenn Simpson met with her after the meeting, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
In Glenn Simpson's Senate testimony from August 2017, see your page, I think 135. Oh shit, is that the right one? Expressions.
I might rephrase that and say they had an opportunity to meet with each other. So it's not necessarily that they had a meeting. It's just that they were both at a common event.
Oh. I'll just say what I have here, page 135. Glenn Simpson is asked if he's ever communicated with anyone that he worked on the Trebizond matter. He says probably Ed Baumgartner. So if Veselnitskaya talks to Simpson, Simpson talks to Baumgartner. If you know Baumgartner, he's kind of a white whale for me. And Sergei Melion and Carter Page have both suggested that he's the true primary, whatever that is, PSS. So, I mean, that's kind of what I'm looking at.
Yeah, he's definitely behind lots of those redacted or privileged emails and that privilege log that they're keeping hidden, circling back to all the Perkins Coie and fusion stuff. He was definitely involved in lots of the alpha research, whether or not the actual pings and cyber stuff, but certainly all the background information and everything. He was definitely digging into all that.
I just want to say on a side unimportant note, if I haven't followed you back, it's because I've reached my limit. It's not because I don't want to. I just wanted to say that. So thank you for all the new followers. But if I'm not following you back, it's just because I can't at the moment. That's all.
Yeah, I've always kind of gotten the impression from the Trump Tower meeting that, if it was a setup, which it kind of looks like it was, that the contents of the meeting weren't really important. What was important is all these people showed up at that meeting and they could be linked to each other. So it's more just sort of a circumstantial building the narrative. It was a narrative tool rather than any sort of substantial thing.
Well, I guess I've always said that was actually a narrative defeating event, and that's why maybe it wasn't really publicized at the time, because if Don Jr. and Trump associates are willing to take a meeting with totally random Russians that were promising dirt on Hillary Clinton, then there's absolutely no way that they were colluding with Russia, because they wouldn't need to take a meeting like that. So I don't know if that's the case. I don't know if that's why they didn't use it that way. I don't know what their intention was, but it, as everybody's alluded to, there's something weird there.
What pisses me off is, like, every single time somebody goes like, oh, the Trump campaign had 132 contacts with Russians or whatever, and then I'm like, so is that average, or is that a lot, or is that a little bit? Because I'm like, give me a control. I'm a scientist here. So how many did Hillary have contact with? How many meetings did she take with Russians? How many meetings, blah, 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 did she take with Chinese? Nobody knows. It's such like a joke, because I guarantee her campaign was meeting with representatives from friggin' everywhere. And all we know every single freaking person that wiped Jared Kushner's ass in Trump Tower on June 9th, 2016 or whatever, and we have no idea what the Hillary Clinton campaign did.
I just want to know if Carter Page is considered one of those many meetings that the Trump people had with Russians.
Oh, yeah, it is. It is. That's guaranteed it is. Every single person he shook hands with when he went to the new economic school, whatever thing, they count. Arkady Dvorkovich and all those other dudes. Those are all contacts.
Oh, I see. So the guy who was working for the Central Intelligence Agency for the United States government, having contacts with Russians that the FBI lied about, that the FBI had to fire or fine a lawyer for Kleinsman, he's still considered one of the many contacts that the Trump administration had with Russians. That guy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
every Russian he touched.
Speaking of Carter Page, this Yodaphone thing, initially I heard it and I was like, okay, there is no Yodaphone. It's all made up crap and all this stuff. What are the chances that somebody actually did have a Yodaphone and that the data was legit, but it was just sort of misappropriated and used for something that it wasn't?
Oh, I think it's very likely, very likely is, I guess, putting it a little bit too strongly, but if I had to guess or pick someone right now, I would say that it very well could be Carter Page's phone. We've seen some documents from when Stephen Halper met with Carter Page, and John Solomon released them a couple years ago, I guess, and it was some of the internal FBI documents where they talked about getting ready for him to go in and meet with Page, and kind of a summary afterwards, all those. And there are a couple of electronic communications which I thought were just odd in that stack of documents at the time. And it's a one page. It says, during this meeting with the CHS had with Crossfire Dragon, Crossfire Dragon was observed using a smartphone, and that's all it says. And at the time I said, I guess this must be something for, the FISA application, maybe, that they're trying to say, okay, we know that he has a smartphone. But as these Yoda phone things come out more and more, it certainly sounds like that could be what they were talking about. And that would, looking at it from the limited information that the FBI had at the time, that, okay, we've got this Yoda phone allegations, we're trying to get Carter Page, and that could all be part of why they felt it was strong enough evidence to go for a FISA.
I actually spent some time today looking through pictures and old images and stuff to see if I could find any evidence, find a picture of somebody using a Yoda phone. And there's a few people that I sort of suspected, but I came up with nothing, of course. But it's kind of
sorry.
No, you go ahead.
The funny thing I was thinking about is I think it was the NYFO, the FBI New York. There was a counterintelligence investigation opened on Carter Page on April 6th. And
that's in time for the Spectrum Health Betsy DeVos interview thing, wouldn't it be?
I don't know. April and Betsy DeVos, I don't know.
Yeah, I was trying to find out who accompanied Trump. If he went to Michigan for that Betsy DeVos interview, we should be able to find a common person that went everywhere to actually see if there is anything to this Yoda phone thing. But sorry,
yeah, that confuses me because that was public reporting, and that should have been something they would have noticed and corrected. So there must be something more to it.
Did anybody here read? I think his first name is Josh. I know his last name is Campbell. He was the FBI's number 2 man under Comey. Anybody read his book, Crossfire Hurricane? I'm amazed that guy hasn't been indicted. He ended up working for CNN, and then he went to go do his Navy Reserve duty somewhere. And he's blocked me on Twitter because every once in a while I'd ask him a Russiagate question, and he eventually ended up blocking me. This guy is completely flown under the radar. Nobody. He wrote an entire book on this. If you're reading the Comey books, if you're reading all the opposition shit, his book is one of the big ones, and he's just completely flown under the radar.
Well, he's posting as Dawson S. Field on Twitter pretty much every single day. if you want to keep track of him,
he's posting as what?
Dawson S. Fields.
Dawson S. Fields.
You have to give him.
Is that an inside joke?
No, that's his pen name.
Oh, okay. But I don't know how that guy has been indicted at all.
Are you actually serious, or is that a joke?
Me?
No, I can't disclose.
Are you saying Dawson is actually Josh Campbell?
Well, of course. Who else would it be?
That's
definitely a Fed of some sort. He's there just to misdirect.
I think the other thing that's really important that everybody seems, well, you guys obviously haven't forgotten it, but nobody questions what the hell happened to Mifsud. Is he dead? Is he presumed dead? Is this one of the other 100 people that the Clintons are always accused of killing, or did he jump off a bridge, or where is he?
Well, the Mifsud being presumed dead story, I think, is another one of those that got very, very overblown. Back in 2019, 18, 19, somewhere back then, the DNC filed almost an exact type of a lawsuit, just like Trump did a couple weeks ago. And they sued everybody under the sun. They said it's all one big conspiracy, and here's all the things they did. And, it pretty much went nowhere because they spent a year and a half trying to just serve everybody, which is what as Trump's people are trying to do right now. So I don't quite get the point of either of them. But they were having trouble locating Mifsud in order to serve him. And so one of the exceptions to your normal service of process is to say, hey, we can't find him. We think he's dead. Can we just, for the purposes of this lawsuit, can we just say that he's presumed dead, and we just publish in a newspaper his summons? And so that's where that story sprouted from, was them filing saying, hey, since no one's heard of him, can the court just, for purposes of this lawsuit and for purposes of us serving him this lawsuit, just say we're going to presume he's dead and publish this in a newspaper?
So you're obviously more knowledgeable than me. So in your educated opinion, you think this was put out by Democrats who just wanted to realize that they couldn't actually question him and just wanted to have whatever they had on record of him saying as being the final word, and that's that, and he's probably hiding in Milan somewhere. I would think it's even worse for them if they said he's presumed dead. It doesn't make you look good that one of the people that we say is actually a Western intelligence asset, which makes your whole theory about that he's working with Russians, since he's one of the main sources feeding people this info that somebody has Hillary Clinton's emails. And since he's the main source, and if he's not a Russian asset, which he's clearly not, and if he's dead, I would assume that would make you look bad. It almost looks like you offed him, not to sound like a conspiracy kook, but it doesn't look good. I mean, if he's dead of a heart attack, fine, but then where is he? The fact that he's missing doesn't really look good for them. It's strange to me that they would actually go, no, he's dead, that's fine, this is his last words. That doesn't make them look good at all.
Yeah, well, I mean,
he's
it's
not
even.
missing.
Yeah, it's just a way to ask the court to serve him by a different way, to make an exception for serving him in person.
So he's not actually missing. He's just not talking.
Well, he's avoided service for however long. I mean, I've never practiced in federal court, so I can't say exactly what all is required. But generally, it's when you have to serve someone in person, except for these limited reasons. And I'm just making up kind of an example here of, if no one has been able to find them for, 18 months, for purposes of the lawsuit, you can say, we're going to go ahead and presume he's dead so that we can publish it this way. It's not a, hey, can you make a judicial finding that he's dead or anything like that. It's just to be able to serve them a different way than the normal way.
Okay, thank you. I got to say, on the plus side, I don't think the Democrats ever thought we would get anywhere close to, even though no one's been charged, and the conspiracy theory is still out there. I don't think that it's 85% of this. I don't think they thought any of this was going to get out. I think they thought that Hillary was going to win, and this would just be a dead issue that only a few people would know about. And I'm just concerned about how long have they been doing this? Have they done this in other elections? I mean, good God! But I don't think that they thought that we would ever know as much as we do now. So that's a plus. Even if nobody ever goes to jail, and I'm not saying that's a good thing, the fact that this much of the story is out and that people are this knowledgeable about what actually happened is actually a good thing that they never saw coming. That was it. That was the tweet. That was it.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be good to get the whole story, right? I mean, there's so many questions still open, and it feels like we have more questions today than we did even a year ago. So hopefully we get some answers soon. Does anybody else have any questions or comments? Go ahead and raise your hand or request to speak. I'll take a few more.
So I'm assuming King talked about the whole grand jury. Can they still investigate and do all this other stuff?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. That was my main question, but I don't even care. I'll figure it out later.
I mean, if you want to get into it, we can review it a little bit.
No, it's not necessary. Okay. I can listen to it later. That's why I don't like coming in late and being like, oh, what did we talk about?
Well,
I figure I'll just listen later.
The key thing I took from that is that there's no time limit on when a superseding indictment can be filed.
There's no time limit except before trial or what?
Right. Yep.
But I think to develop that evidence, he would have to have another grand jury going right now.
Well, I think that's true, but it's like also, it's like he's not outlining all this information and he's not outlining conspiracy for nothing. So there's got to be a reason behind all this stuff, and I suppose we'll know within a month if the trial doesn't get pushed back. But it's like,
well, I mean, he can be using the EDVA grand jury, can't he? I mean, all these people are connected.
Well, Sussman's being tried in D.C., right?
Yeah, no, but Danchenko's over in EDVA. I don't know why he can't just use that grand jury.
Yeah, but why would he be exposing like Danchenko evidence in the Sussman trial? It's sort of.
No, I'm saying for a separate charge over there, because I mean,
isn't that what they did with Manafort?
That's where they would actually want to do a conspiracy charge instead of DC.
Right. Yeah, in any district that a conspiracy is active in, I think Durham can impanel a grand jury, right? So, Danchenko's over there.
He already has one.
Right. Well, yeah,
over there.
You're right. But I mean, tomorrow, there's nothing. We brought this up earlier. I mean, there's nothing stopping Durham from going to that grand jury tomorrow and saying, "Hey, I want to investigate a conspiracy case here. I want to issue grand jury subpoenas for all these documents that are subject to the redactions," and he can fight and overcome those privilege claims there, and then pursue a conspiracy case against Sussman. And I guess it's kind of weird. We were discussing that earlier. It's kind of weird that he doesn't do that with all the issues that seem to be arising with his motion here. So.
I saw King basically unmute for a second about the EDVA grand jury or something like that.
You people already anticipated what I was going to say, so I have nothing to add.
Nice. See, I would like it if first of all, I want to know who was paying for Danchenko's lawyers the entire time. Given Shamel is Manos's and Danchenko's lawyers. If Jaffe was paying for for Shamel the entire time, I feel like that's even furthering a conspiracy.
Or who was paying for them but clearly yanked the checkbook.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's basically once Danchenko is all right, I'm probably going to start cooperating because why wouldn't I? Shamel was all right, I'm out of here. I'm going to go protect Manos and Angelos for a little bit.
Yeah, and it's kind of weird. I mean, Georgia Tech's picking up the tab for those bills, so
they're picking up the tab for Shamel?
Yeah. Yep.
No way.
Yep.
I was just thinking that was related to the Attorney General crap or something. But
no,
okay.
It's Carol Midas and Manos are both getting reimbursement. I don't know about Dagan.
Those lucky ducks.
He's cooperating, so I don't know how that works, but yeah. So that's a nice little perk for them. I know the one bill was pretty large that I saw.
Yeah, he's not cheap. And he's definitely dirty.
What's on the horizon in the near future for FOIA responses?
Man, I don't know. I got so much stuff in motion right now. So let's see. This week I expect. Actually, last week I was supposed to get stuff from the Attorney General of Georgia. So Georgia Tech appointed. Or there's some type of relationship with the Attorney's General office in Georgia, where there's a representative there that's kind of like an intermediary between all the parties. And this individual is subject to the open records laws of Georgia. So I put in an open records request for this individual for communications to all the lawyers involved, some representatives at Georgia Tech, and for John Durham's team as well. So that's going to be a really interesting set of documents. I don't know what kind of exemptions they can claim over them. I'm not aware that they can really exclude too much. So it's going to be interesting. That was supposed to come last Wednesday. I still don't have it yet. So that'll be here any day. I've got a main nerve case file that'll be coming within a day or two. That's related to litigation that Rodney Joffe and Bostrom and Packet interrogation and Victor Oppelman were involved with, back in 2005. So that'll be here any day. I've got 4 open records requests at Georgia Tech for any communications related to sent from the Rhamnesia Project contract people to anyone involved with the Senate or the Congress. I've got 4 or 5 open at Cybercom right now for like comms to Joffe and Karaminas and things of that nature. I've got probably 10 at the State Department, which are just in a black hole. I have no idea where they are. Still got like 10 or 15 at the FBI. I've got probably 10 at the Department of Justice. And I've got a bunch at DHS. And then I'm missing something. Oh, Obama. I got a bunch with Obama. And yeah, I don't know. Kind of a long, rambling answer. But yeah, we're going to get a lot. Oh, I got a bunch at DARPA. That's probably the most important. I should get my first stuff with DARPA here in 6 or 7 weeks. So, sorry, long answer.
Seeing as the state of Georgia seems to have a really good records request program, I mean, do you try to focus those requests to work on the Georgia side rather than the federal side, or you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I'm an incredibly impatient guy, so it's been really nice to have somebody that'll process a FOIA request. If I had just tried to fight with the feds, I mean, I would have quit this so long ago, because I am not patient enough for this. Basically, if you FOIA anything of the FBI or the Department of Justice, they're just gonna return it to you. Like, they're gonna come up with some excuse, and then you have to appeal it. So that's been incredibly frustrating. They don't process much, and they're really slow to do it. So yeah, I mean, I try to focus on the Georgia side. I try to focus on, I think DHS just processes a little bit more. Cybercom's going to process a little bit better. Yeah, I don't know what Obama will be like. I have some interesting FOIAs with Obama, and the nice thing about him is that they'll tell you how many records are returned. So, like, I know there's like 255 pages of comms with Hillary Clinton, Jake Sullivan, and I think Paul Meary or something like that, to President Obama himself or his chief of staff between like April 1, 2016 through January 2017. So that seems like a lot to me. Like, that 255 pages from really high level people to the President of the United States. That seems like a lot. I know Rodney Joffe has a bunch of communications with the president, and it'll be interesting. I'm kind of waiting to see if he has the right to exert executive privilege over those documents, and that'll be huge, right? That'll be a huge story if he does that. So we'll see.
Those requests actually get submitted to like the Obama library, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right, or is it through the
that's right.
archives? Or okay,
yeah, something like that. I don't know. It's like I think it's the library that I submitted them through.
Ryan, Ryan.
Yeah.
Your challenge is if they assert executive privilege, your challenge for the week is to get Biden to waive it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they certainly weakened it, right? They didn't want to defend it when Trump was trying to exert it. So if they're going to defend it when Obama tries to assert it, it's going to be a nice story.
You know that you guys were talking about that, or I guess sending DMs about the fusion litigation or whatever about privilege. Did you guys talk about that already?
A little bit, yeah.
Where is that? What district, I guess, is that being litigated? Does anybody know?
It's a good question. I don't think we discussed that. I certainly don't know.
Wait, are you talking about
Wagbar?
the one that's referenced in
Yeah.
Sussman's pleading tonight?
Yeah.
I think he indicated that it was going to be filed in this case because he didn't give a date. It says forthcoming.
Oh, forthcoming.
Yeah, so I
figured it was already filed and somebody was going to rule or something.
I don't know.
I would have to reread it again.
Probably waiting for the Spaces chat to end to see if there's anything they need to take out of there before they file it.
Well, let me scroll real fast to figure out which one's Glenn.
That's what happened
At the very bottom.
That's what happened on Friday, like just minutes after the Spaces ended. Then we got new filings.
All right, everyone, let's get off of here.
All right.
Well, that was like 12:30 in the morning, right? That we got that last filing. I know I went to bed and
it's probably 11:30.
You must be
11:30.
Damn it! I had like another question or comment or something. Can't remember now. I'll come back. It'll probably come to me.
We're just gonna leave it.
We're gonna circle back on that.
Oh no, I figured out. So I mean I wasn't here on the chat on Friday, but that memoranda by the CIA, like memoranda for record or whatever. Do we know who wrote that?
Are you saying the January 31st one or the February?
No, the February one.
I'm guessing it's Mark Chaddison.
Nah, he wasn't.
He's
there.
the contractor. He set the meeting.
So
didn't
like
say Kevin, someone. Kevin
so yeah,
Redacted
Kevin and Steve. So like he was using him the third person or whatever, probably.
Probably.
I was just seeing because. Yeah, it was probably one of those. Because, I mean, if somebody wasn't... It has to be somebody who was there, because there was only two people there, and it was Steve and Kevin, right?
That's what it seems like.
Yeah, okay. But then there's... I feel like there was other redactions that was referring to the memorandum writer. I'll have to look at it again. But it's probably one of those two. Because, like in Sussman's testimony, he said he met with somebody from the CIA General Counsel. So one of those guys is probably from the General Counsel of the CIA.
Well, he says he met with someone, or he just talked to her.
Well, he said he talked to the General Counsel. Then he said he met with people from the section of the CIA. Whatever section it is, and I think he said one of them was from the General Counsel's office.
There was also talk of a liaison to the FBI, that there is speculation about who that might have been.
Yeah, I think you're right, Fool. I think he talked to the General Counsel in December, right? And then when he actually got the meeting, there was a representative there.
That would make sense.
Yep.
Yeah, I wonder if one of them is a liaison, but maybe not. Cool.
I actually did a little bit of looking about that, and it sounded to me, it's kind of hard to say because this is all like way deep in the sort of the mechanics of how these things work, but that the liaisons between the CIA and FBI are often legal attaches. And it kind of made me think, what if it was someone like Sama or someone like that was sort of involved in this, and it just, I don't know, kind of strange. But
well, it seemed like they already had from like Brennan's book and all these other things, when they set up the fusion cell, they already had FBI representatives like embedded in the CIA, so they're always there.
Yeah,
But
like after 9/11, there was all this talk about the intelligence wall that was set up between the CIA and the FBI and other intel agencies, and how bad that was and how it led to 9/11. And, the last 5 years I've been sitting here going, well, you know what, maybe these intelligence walls were a good idea. And it's kind of strange how things swing around like that.
It's weird to me. One thing that I was focusing on when I was reading those documents, and correct me if I'm wrong, but Chattison is like the guy that set up this meeting for Sussman. But in previous documents that we've gotten, Sussman described, or somebody described, that Sussman was in a client meeting, and the client was like a representative of the CIA who was interested in that subject. So my assumption is Chattison is that person that was in that client meeting. And then you look at the clients or the potential clients. There's several organizations that Chattison was working for at the time, but like that's such a weird topic to bring up at a client meeting.
Chattison is in deep with the CIA,
right?
And it's weird. You look at his timeline; he's clearly a Trump supporter and all this stuff. But what I got from it is that he had some sort of relationship with Rodney Jaffe, and he was used as the in to get access to the CIA.
I was kind of trying to pull on that thread. I didn't actually see a connection that I could pinpoint, though.
Where was the reference to him being in a client meeting? Because I remember you said that before, and it sort of rings a bell, but I can't recall where, how, or anything.
It has not. It wasn't a recent document. I'll have to put some thought into which filing that was in. I want to say it came out of the Alpha civil case, but I'll have to do some searching for it. Well,
that was number 68 on the document, number 68 on the docket. Exhibit C was what contained the reference to Mark Chattison.
Yeah, and then there's this prior document that I have in my recollection of Sussman describing, or somebody describing Sussman being at a client meeting, and then got to talking with the client, and the client said, yeah, the CIA would be interested in knowing more about these pings or whatever, and then Chattison or whoever this client was set up the meeting. So I'll have to put some thought into that. I can't remember where that was from. So I don't know if anybody else has any more questions or comments. I'll hang out for another 10 minutes, but if we don't have a filing in this case by 12:30, I think I'm going to call it a night.
Oh, I see it here in his Sussman's testimony. Let's see. So you went back. It's on page 74.
74.
How did that meeting get arranged? To meet with him in February. He says, no, I was in another client meeting, completely unrelated. And I was meeting with someone who had a relationship with probably the CIA. Perhaps had worked there in the past.
It sounds like that would be Chattison.
Mm-hmm.
And it would be interesting if that was Palantir. And I have a link where Palantir was using Perkins Coie as their law firm in 2016. So that'd be kind of interesting.
Which law firm was it that Flynn, his original attorneys had that sort of conflict in there?
Covington and Burling.
Covington and Burling, that was it. Yeah.
I have a stupid question. out of all the big names, and you don't have to name them if you don't. I realize some of them give a lot of you guys credit, but I'm sure that there are many, many who don't. Do you guys run into that where like you guys will do a lot of the work, and then the mainstream guys will just cite your work and then just not give you? You don't have to name any names. I'm just curious. Go ahead.
Sean Davis never does that.
Sean Hannity never does.
No, Sean Davis from what is that? Real Clear Investigations.
He never cites you at all. I'm sorry, I don't know if my mic is coming in through. So Sean never cites you.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of these guys on this chat have done some outstanding work, and there's been varying degrees of attribution to the great work that Fool Nelson and Walk of Fire and others have done. So some people give credit, some people don't. It's just the nature of the business.
Yeah, I didn't. Why does my mic work right? I didn't realize the level of education in this room. I see names like Technofog and username Undead. I haven't seen you before, but I could tell by the way you guys are talking. You guys, I feel like I'm supposed to, like in most rooms that I walk into, if I just mention, because I'm used to hanging out in lefty spaces, you just mention the Carter Page debacle and you're some kind of genius, so you're telling them something they don't know. I didn't realize what I was walking into, but it's been a pleasure. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and yeah, I mean, Technofog. I mean, everybody in conservative news just waits for Technofog to write his first piece, and then I don't want to say they plagiarize Technofog, but I mean they kind of follow his lead. It sure seems like. We're lucky to have him here for sure.
I do. There's some guys who do give there's one guy who definitely gives Technofog attribution, but that's what I was asking because I know that guy does, and I don't know if all of them do, but I know like one guy does, but that's about it that I know of.
Yeah, I mean Dan Bongino, I think he's been great.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about.
Yep.
I don't know. Out of all of them, like I just I do like the mainstream guys. I don't know if you guys do like the Jimmy Dore and the Aaron Mates who are. They're just so left that some people kind of ignore them, but they've been actually pretty great. I think even Glenn Greenwald, they've been actually pretty solid on this. I think the usuals that I know about is just Bongino, who basically built his career on this. Like he was almost unheard of, and then he went all in on this, and he wrote like a couple of books. I haven't even gotten to his books because I'm busy reading lefty books about it just to test myself before I even get into the other books by people telling the truth. And I just found it odd that he was the only one where I ever heard the name Technofog. I don't think I've ever heard it anywhere else. He seems to be the only one giving attribution to anyone. I don't want to like throw anybody under the bus or anything. I'm just saying. And again, we and the rest of the audience, we appreciate all the work that you guys do. Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate that. JS, how's it going? Sorry, I don't know, Jas or JS? All right, we'll come back to you.
Another question that you guys probably will know, maybe because I hang out a lot on the lefty side of shit. John Solomon is a legit fucking. I mean, he's done a lot of good work, but as the more I dive into fucking lefty Twitter, the more sorry for Christian, the more they seem to be like every one of his articles now. There's a giant caveat that says we've looked into this and some of this is questionable. That it has all come from Rudy Giuliani. And none of this is real. But that's all. I'm assuming that's all nonsense. That what he's doing is actually good work.
Well, I can't speak to the entire body of his work or anything. I know he has some great sourcing on certain stories, and he was really deep into a lot of the Ukraine stuff. And I think there's
right. That's what I'm confusing with the Ukraine stuff. I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, there was at least one or two stories in there where I think his sources told him something and he reported it, and kind of is what it is. I
Yeah,
don't know.
he puts himself in a bad spot because I notice a lot of it is like, well, I personally had an interview with so and so, and I believe him. It puts you in a bad spot when like a lot of your reporting is I personally interviewed so and so, and this is what they told me. You're making yourself kind of the character in the main part. I'm not saying I don't believe him. It's just maybe it's a weird way of going about it. Maybe there's no other way to do it when you're trying to interview people who don't really want to talk. But yeah, I was just asking.
I think early on, John Solomon was sort of hooked into some good sources, and that was before everything got down into like the detailed nitty gritty, but his problem was that he was completely affiliated with the Hill, which was completely counter to what his goals were. So he was constantly battling the people that employed him and everything. But I kind of got the feeling that he was sort of hooked into the same sources that the Republican Congress was. And as soon as 2018 midterm elections came around and, the power of Congress changed, he sort of lost all his sources and lost all the stuff that got him sort of the inside loop into Russiagate. And it sort of fell apart after that.
But like in relation to like his reporting on basically anything, like usually they'll just say like this is Ukrainian or like Rudy Giuliani disinformation, but like I still like struggle to figure out what the hell is any of the Ukrainian disinformation coming out of Ukraine that Rudy and John Solomon were reporting. Like I know he's gotten like a little bit of like factual stuff wrong, but that's just based off of sourcing, and he'll say like sometimes who the source actually is, but I still can't figure out what the hell is this whole entire supposed disinformation coming out of Rudy Giuliani and all these people in Ukraine, because usually it's from what I've researched and talked about and talked with people who were there, Andrei Teleshenko or whoever, it's all legit. Like it's just basically another MSM information operation to just ridicule John Solomon when it actually he was probably pretty spot on.
Yeah, that's kind of a whole side of this whole thing that hasn't been really explored is, all the stuff that came from Lushenko, Black Ledger, all that stuff out of Ukraine, with Fiona Hill and how that's all intertwined with the greater Russiagate. That sort of stuff that hasn't been really figured out yet.
Well, yeah, like what people, it's insane because they talk about this like the people, like that's why I made a post like yesterday where they had this Hunter Biden story, which was completely real emails. There was a laptop dropped off at John McIsaac's store, and New York Post published the emails. Legit. Everything was not a Russian disinformation campaign. Where you look at the 2016 election, the most, I guess, something that's like the most comparable to the Hunter Biden stuff is the Black Ledger, where Ukraine just dumps this Black Ledger to the New York Times or whoever. They publish information about it. It's never been proven to be true. It's probably not. And it got Manafort kicked off the campaign. And nobody ever talks about it. Nobody knows where the hell it came from. And it's basically like I made a post about it yesterday. It was like a Ukrainian disinformation operation on its face, and nobody can actually rebut that because we have no clue. And Durham should be looking at what the hell that is, because pretty much everybody has confirmed that it's fake, and it's obviously fake.
Yeah, everybody screams about Hunter Biden's laptop, chain of custody. Nobody knows where this stuff came from, and that's completely incorrect because the information went from Hunter Biden to John McIsaac to the FBI.
Yeah, there's no
nothing
issues
in between. Yeah, and it's just because there's an offshoot where John McIsaac took copies of the laptop and then also provided it to Rudy. Everybody says there's no chain of custody with this thing, and no, it came directly from Hunter Biden is where it originated.
Exactly.
Well, I'm probably not telling you guys anything you don't know, but the whole point of the Black Ledger was to reopen investigation into Manafort. Manafort was the target, and it didn't matter whether the ledger was real or not. The point was to get that. Basically, they were pretty much told the only way that we can continue is if there is another. They're like wink, wink, hint, hint. If there's another investigation into Manafort, we can move forward with whatever they were doing. I'm doing this off the top of my head, so unfortunately, I don't remember it that well. But it's basically something to that effect that it didn't matter how real or illegitimate the ledger was. The point was to go after Manafort. And yeah, and the roots of Russiagate start in Ukraine because Chalupa, who is a DNC hack and doesn't belong there, starts randomly going, I think there's a tie to Russia in the middle of this entire Ukraine thing. And that's pretty much where it started. Like this is before, the FBI claims that it's not the dossier, it's not Carter Page, it's the Greek guy whose name I can never pronounce. It's not Vasilopoulos.
Papadopoulos.
It's Papadopoulos. They claim that Papadopoulos is what sets off the investigation, even though they don't hear about the Papadopoulos story till a day later that the investigation starts, according to Stork, who starts the investigation a day before he even hears about it. But it actually starts in Ukraine, and it is part of Russiagate is part of the Ukraine story, and then Ukraine gets complicated because there's almost no good guys there. Shokin could be kind of a semi-corrupt figure, and it gets complicated. But yes, Russiagate and Ukrainegate are definitely, kind of the same story.
It's all the same scandal. All the same.
Well, yeah, first of all, they had a criminal investigation open on Manafort already. Like they started one January 12th, 2016, which I think was basically pushed probably by the Chalupas and Anzac and all those people. And and that's what brought the ledger about and stuff like that. And then they opened up the counterintelligence investigation later in August. And yeah.
One day they're going to make a mini series out of all this. Of course, it's going to have to be all self-funded because Hollywood would never pay for this fucking thing.
Hey, love, what's going on?
Hi guys again. You guys seem to know about the law a lot. I'm not sure if any of you guys are lawyers, but I found this document online, right? And it's like a court document, and it basically says that the United States went Chapter 11, and then on the bottom it's signed by Donald J. Trump. It says United States Bankruptcy Court, Northern District of Florida, Tallahassee Division. And
That sounds totally legit.
And then it's talking about creditors. Okay. I'm just going to go to the one part. Matter of what the bankrupt United States owes its true creditors, which is the American people in direct relation to the Borrowed Gold and National Banking Emergency Act of 1933, all commercial public debt obligation while transacting all business within the United States, Inc. Commercial markets belong to the United States, as the United States is the true obligator in each and every U.S. commercial transaction, and non-settlement of the United States, commercial, blah, 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 public debt. And on the bottom, it's signed by Donald J. Trump.
Not too familiar with that. I mean, he has declared bankruptcy a couple times in his lifetime, but if you want to DM that to me, I'll take a look at it. It might be real, might be fake. I don't know exactly which one you're referencing there.
It's basically
but
going against United States Corporation, like basically saying that we were taken out of the corporation. But
yeah, I guess I'm not sure what you're referencing. If you want to DM that to me, I'll take a look though.
Okay, I'm trying to find the photo version, the snapshot version of it that I could try and DM it to you. I don't know how to find. All these documents come out, right? That Donald Trump supposedly put into actions, right? But I'm like, how can you tell if these are actual factual court filings? So yeah. No.
Yeah, if you want to DM that to me, I mean, we'll take a look at it. It sounds like it might be fake, but yeah, we can find the court case if there is something there, and we'll take a look at it.
Oh, thank you. It is worth looking at, though. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. I saw somebody requested to speak there. If you wanted to speak, go ahead and request again. I'm happy to add you. I'm gonna check the docket one more time. I don't know what's going on. I'm really surprised that we don't have a filing from Fusion GPS right now.
I just looked. There's nothing.
Nothing. That's so weird. Pulling this up. So it says, yeah, it says forthcoming. I don't know what that means in that earlier filing from tonight. So, all right, guys. I think we can go ahead and end it here. I was really hoping to get that Fusion GPS filing tonight, but I'm assuming it'll come tomorrow, and probably won't do a Spaces chat tomorrow night. But a few days from now, we're going to try to stay on top of this. So anytime there's a major story or filing or case or theory or FOIA release, you can probably look for this chat, and we'll try to do one. Might not do 3.5 hours every night, but maybe we'll just do an hour. We'll do a condensed version and try to cover it as best we can, especially as long as the media is really not covering it. We'll do our best. So thank you for everybody that came out tonight. Thank you to all our speakers, King especially. So, I mean, we just appreciate everything you do, King. When you slide in the chat and you can answer all legal questions that we have, it's so helpful to everybody. So we appreciate that, and hopefully everybody will want to come back out for the next chat. So everybody have a good night, and I'm going to end it here.
Night, Ryan. Thanks.